I'll just wait till the clock turns over to 6 to call the meeting to order. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I will. Day, August 16th. Welcome, everybody. My name is Mark Kruchnet. I'm an ADR member. I will let the other ADR members that are here introduce themselves. We do have another ADR member that will be joining about an hour late into the meeting. And then he will introduce himself at that time. Laura and Joey, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, I'm Laura Dewar Ross, and ADR member.
And I'm Joey Buckingham, Ross resident and ADR member.
Great. First, before I describe the meeting format for those of you who are not familiar with it, we have open time for public comments. If anybody wants to comment for up to 3 minutes on an item that is not on tonight's agenda, now is the time. You can raise your hand using the Zoom button, or if you're in person, you may do it that way. Okay. Now, Mark Fritz has joined us. As soon as he's on and unmuted, he can introduce himself. He's another ADR member.
Mark Fritz, ADR member, always 30 seconds late there, Mark. Well done.
I'm very timely. Nice to see you, Mark, again. Now, as far as the minutes are concerned, I read over the July 11th minutes. They looked good to me from having observed the meeting, but I need someone else to approve them and second them for those of you who have read over them.
I looked over them and I approve them.
Yeah, I can second that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, before we move on to the planning applications, let me just describe this format for those of you that aren't familiar with it. Many of you have done this before. First, the town presents a project. Then the owners or their team presents the project as well, giving further descriptions to it. If it's a return project, they only need to talk about the changes that have been made, if any. At that point, the ADR can ask questions. Once the ADR is done with those questions, we open it up to the public, and any member of the public can comment on it or ask questions for up to 3 minutes. We then bring it back to the ADR for our recommendations to the town council. And during that time, there is no discussion with the public. There was some confusion over this last time. At that point, it is just the ADR giving their recommendations, and that is the end of the item, and then we move on to the next item. Thank you. And because the first item, 1 Hilgert, is within 500 feet of my home, Joey will be taking over chairing this item, and I will recuse myself and then rejoin the meeting at the end of this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So the first thing that happens with 1 Hilgert is the town will present the project to all of us, and specifically what has changed since the last time.
Good evening, ADR members and the public here. The project at 1 Hilgert has been before ADR a few times now, so I don't have a lengthy presentation. There have been a few changes, and I will let the architect go over those specific changes just to keep this meeting moving along. So if the architect could please.
Yeah, good evening. I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so we've made changes, 5 quick bullet points for y'all. We have 1, altered the floor area to conform with the existing non-conforming residence. To do this, reduce the size of the garage and remove floor area at the rear of the house, the family room on the main level. We have reduced building heights. where we've lowered the building heights are floor to floor at main level, 12 feet from 13 feet. For level, upper level, 10 feet generally, with the exception of the master bedroom, which is a floor to floor at 12 feet. The aggregate roof height summary would follow as the highest point, which is towards the rear at the master bedroom, is 27 foot 6 inches. The mean height is 24 feet. Just a note is from the street view, we wouldn't necessarily pick up and see the 27 foot 6 from the street. We removed the roof deck area at the roof of the garage. And two last quick things, materials. We'd like to sustain the taupe and gray color scheme or off-white scheme, which is consistent with the existing house colors. And we made no changes to the building location, though none were recommended. They essentially sit, the new home sits essentially in the same footprint area with some exception to the existing. And we can get into that in more detail if you'd like. Those are our points of change.
Okay, do the ADR members have any questions of the applicants?
I do, Joey, if I could for a quick second.
Yes, please.
And this is actually to Rebecca first. I noticed on the previous submittals and the town report, we had an existing square footage of around, call it 3,200, 3,300 square feet. Currently, as Steve just presented, they are determining that the existing home is at 3,800 square feet. So I'd like to understand what the discrepancy is there. The existing home keeps getting bigger, which mine doesn't seem to be getting bigger. So I'd like to know why that's happening. So that's my first question. Maybe Rebecca, you can address that.
Sure, I can address that. So I've done some further research as well as had more conversations with the homeowners and looked at the side structure as well as the rear structure, looked at our definition of porch, and let me just go over that. Porch means a roof structure projecting from the exterior wall of a dwelling for the purposes of providing shelter for an entrance. Porches provide an architectural transition between the interior of a residence and a yard and may not be used as living space. So that porch, on the structure on the side yard, is previous to the ADR members seeing the home now. When the Katzes purchased the home, they had an abatement company come in. That abatement company has provided a letter stating that structure, I will call it a porch, at the side, did in fact have a roof on it, and I've seen that letter. So that was sort of my first piece of evidence that it could be defined as a porch. Secondly, there is that existing carport, and so to me that porch provides a transition from an entrance and an exit from that house to that carport. Most likely the people who lived there previously pulled into the carport, got out of their car, and came into their house through that side entrance. So that porch is more than 10 feet in depth and can be defined as floor area. So that is where that extra 500 square feet came from.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification. And Steve, can you talk just a brief moment or two about what is happening above the garage? I know it's not an occupiable space, but I'm not sure. Is it roof? Is it flat roof with a parapet? What's happening over there?
Yeah.
At this point?
Flat roof with parapet, Mark. Basically torch down tar and gravel roofing system on top. A very low parapet just to keep the coping edge clean, and no height proposed, no access other than view intended.
I appreciate that.
It looks like in the floor plan, it actually is. Hold on, let me just see really quickly.
Yeah, I think you're referring to the sliding, what appear to be sliding doors, Joey, in the floor plan?
Yeah, it looks like you can go out onto that roof.
Definitely not the. Yeah, that's definitely not the intention. I think just in the rapid pace to get this turned around and back in, we oversaw the door. That can be corrected in the as a condition, not a problem.
Okay, I did notice, Laura, do you have any questions?
Just wondering if any of any of the windows were changed or reduced at all on the two neighboring sides.
Great question. Several windows on the right side were lowered because of the lowering of ceiling height and floor to floor. We changed heights of windows on the main level, which formerly was 13 feet tall interior. We brought that down to 12 feet, and proportionately, it made more sense to lower windows along that side of the house on that facade. And several minor adjustments to windows above, just in terms of how high they were relative to the floor, didn't make sense to the interior, though. The intent is, especially in the bathroom windows, to create obscure glass there, so that privacy is maintained interiorly and from exterior.
Okay, and then one other question kind of also tied into privacy. I quickly looked at the planting plan, and I was seeing like low hedges or shrubs. Is there any plan for taller privacy screening between those two neighbor properties?
Yeah, the intent is, Laura, the intent is to have actually tall planting line on both property lines to create concealment privacy for the homeowners on the property, as well as to restore and bring back into effect some of the plantings that had been removed previously.
Yeah, because with windows like that, I think that's like essential, you know.
Yeah, we do too. We think that it's nice to look out of window towards a backdrop of green, not into, other people's garages or bathrooms or bedrooms. And we think that would be a charming feature for them as well, to look into, a buffering of planting.
I think a lot of those buffering plants were removed recently, so that would probably be a nice gesture to bring them back.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the intent.
Large format.
Large format, dense,
Yes.
easy to maintain.
Could you speak a little bit? Could you please go to the elevations and bring them up on the screen and be very explicit on what materials are where, because it could be in your rush to get these back in, there are arrows that do not, they don't actually go to anywhere. For example, doors, what I'm trying to figure out is where the wood siding would be, vertical wood siding, as opposed to the white stucco you are proposing.
Oh, okay. First things first, Rebecca, if you could help by enabling me to share my screen, that would be awesome.
Like, we need a color rendering with like a materials board.
Okay, so in the drawing set, there is that, and maybe what you're asking for, we have provided, or we haven't provided it to your satisfaction. I'm going to bring your attention to sheet, I'm getting there in just a second. Sheet A 4.0, which is 25 sheets in or so. We have a materials, colors, details sheet.
You want me to bring up the plans, Steve?
That'd be great, but I was hoping that maybe I could share screen. Can I
Maybe
try
both are,
again?
So it should work,
Okay,
but I'm here. I can stop sharing if you can do it.
yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
Okay, just checking that you can see a mouse moving back and forth and an image of a sheet.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, so on the left, the largest drawing that's here on the left is a excerpt of the front elevation that shows the front entrance door. I'm going to annotate over this so it's a little bit clearer. This is the entrance door. And we, in general, are proposing two stucco types, a taupe dark gray and a taupe light gray, warm gray, could be white, but we know that there's been some pushback on white, so we're going to soften that. And that's in keeping with the colors of the existing home and several other projects in the area. One is, I believe, 67 Poplar has a very similar color scheme that was very inspirational for the homeowner. There is no vertical wood siding proposed. This is generally a stucco clad home with two colors that has, there's a, let's just call it a game of articulation. And I just realized, yes, wood slat in the front fence and gates. The gate elements will have a fencing, and the semi-transparent fence will have a low section that is stucco, which is indicated here, here, an open lattice work above, and then a slat wood infill panel for the main drive gate, the walk-in gate, and the side gate. And I can show you where those are located on site plan momentarily.
So are those gates, it looks like they are not see-through. It looks like that's a solid rendering of the vertical
Yes, ma'am.
wood.
Yes, ma'am. And an overall view would be something in this ilk. Just to take a second further. So you can see here where my mouse is floating. This is a solid wood. These gates are approximately, or the fence height is approximately 4 feet tall. And planting is intended to be low hedge shrub before it, slightly taller, and 2-layer before the fence. And then on the back of the fence, the rendering might have been a little bit better here. The intention is a taller screening element, which is taken from and in keeping with the design review guidelines booklet that we've followed.
Okay, if you go to sheet A 3.0, there is a number 3 vertical wood siding that points to the building. And then on the upper,
Error in keynoting.
pardon me?
It's an error in our annotation.
Oh, so there is absolutely no vertical wood siding on the building itself. It's 100% stucco.
That is correct.
Okay.
Stephen, can you clarify the underside of the soffits? Is that on your
Yes,
previous
yes,
materials?
sir.
board, is that wood?
That will be wood.
Thank you.
So just to clarify the ask for a materials board, I think our question would be, does this satisfy what you're looking for, or are you hoping for more?
You will need to do a physical board, because it's really important that when it goes into construction, it matches what you said you were going to use. And we've
Okay.
had problems before with digital renderings and colors not matching.
Okay.
So we need an actual materials board.
Okay,
to
and
sign
is
off
that
on.
something we can work out with Rebecca in terms of the logistics of delivering that and having that on hand for you to review? Or is that something that we need to deliver right away, or is that when do we need to get that to y'all?
Well, I guess it's not going to happen tonight. But let's absorb the comments from tonight. And
Yeah.
then it's basically, when you hear what everybody would like to see and you decide on a design, then you just get that in as quickly as possible. Sometimes it's happened where it goes through to the town council, and we will come and look at the materials, so you don't have to go through this again. If
Okay,
what
that's
you
great.
want. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we definitely need to see physical samples.
Okay.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? Any of the other ADR?
No, not me.
Okay, so now I think it's time to go out to public comment. Rebecca, you want to help me out with IDing
Sure.
out there.
Steve, if you could stop sharing your screen, because then I can see if anybody has their hand raised. Thank you. Let's see. I don't see anybody with their hand
Yes.
raised.
I see Tony with a
Wait,
physical
Tony.
hand raised,
Tony.
not a digital, but a physical hand raise.
There you are. Thank you. Let's see. You can unmute yourself and go ahead, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi. I've been a neighbor on 7 Hilgert for, 35 years. I attended Paul Kingsley's, I think it was his 99th birthday, and we had it on that porch, and there was no roof on that porch. And there might be a partial trellis, but there's no roof. And that porch was never permitted. And I'm just surprised by the plasticity of FAR. When the house was sold to the Katzes, it was listed as having 2,164 feet. Zillow listed as 2,485. And how it's been able to jump to 3,842 is kind of a magic act. So I think that somebody needs to really verify the FAR. Okay, that being said, there's still too much mass and bulk. I think one thing that I think maybe ADR should consider, if you put the garage in the back where it is now, but moved off of the Zampa's property line, that would create less mass in the front, which now feels walled off. And also that would avoid any mischief of putting a porch on top later. If you see the house from Sharon Baker's backyard, it is extraordinarily intrusive and massive, and in a way that's not there now. So I appreciate there have been some changes, but particularly with the plate height is still really high, and the flat roof, it just seems too massive and walls off the street. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Does anyone else have any other comments?
I do. I see Marta. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Sharon Baker. I'm sitting at Marta's computer because I couldn't get Zoom working. I'm the neighbor at 3 Hilgert, and I would like to invite you guys over to come look at the height of the property from my backyard, because it does feel overbearing to me that it's going to really change my view, my light, my whole feeling in my backyard with the house towering over. Also, I was going to suggest one other thing. On the previous or one of the previous meetings, they had the house over to the left towards the Zampas, 1.5 or 2 feet. And I suggest we move it back that way, because on the Zampa side, it's driveway and garage next to driveway and carport, where on my side, it is house next to house, if that makes sense. You know, my house is next to, closer to the house, which is a bigger house than the Kingsley's house. I hope I made sense.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm looking at the drawings while you're saying that. Does anyone else have any other comments?
I don't see anybody else with their hands raised.
Okay, so let's go back then to the ADR and comments. Who would like to go first? Can't be me because I'm running the meeting.
I think I can start unless Laura, you're dying to jump in.
It's okay.
Yeah. So I think while I appreciate the reduction in floor height, I think we're still struggling. I'm still struggling. I won't speak for my colleagues. I'm still struggling with the mass, and it's dominance over the streetscape. I recognize that, it's not maxing out at 30 feet. But what we do have is a 24-foot, mass in the front yard setback. And each time I come and visit the site, that hasn't really been addressed, right? I think we've reduced it from 27 or 28 feet down to maybe 24 and change. But the substantial mass that's being placed on that front streetscape, that is a, more or less a continuous wall. I recognize there's a balcony and some overhangs. Still is an imposing mass on the street. And I think that's the overall massing is what we've had trouble with from day one with this particular project. Moving the house 2 feet or left or right, it's still an imposing structure. It doesn't have any soft edges. It doesn't address the adjacent properties because it's in the setback. It doesn't adjacent the properties with a softer palette of mass, right? As you see, the adjacent properties do have pitched gable roofs, things that soften masses. And this particular project still does not have that. And I understand it's a modern aesthetic, and that is the client's will, which is perfectly appropriate in the town. But we still aren't fundamentally addressing that front mass. I do appreciate the garage being pulled back, but as a streetscape, that hasn't fundamentally changed. And I think that's the part of the project that I find most troublesome. I think that is exacerbated by the excessive square footage on the lot. I don't have an opinion whether there was a roof over that porch or not, but as you could indicate, as you might have guessed by my original question, I don't think 3,800 square feet is appropriate for this lot, at least not in this massing. I think there are other opportunities from other geometries that you might be able to get that square footage, but it is not being represented well in this lot. And I think that continues to be a problem with this particular project. It was at the initial round was excessive, 7,000 square feet or something, and then we were in the 4,000 range. We're dropped just below 4,000. My personal opinion is has to be closer to a 33,000, 3,200 square foot project. My third comment would be, I think what we are recognizing that there's an existing home, and the applicant's placing this home in the front, sort of aligning those front walls. Because of the massing of this current home, is not as dominant as what we're proposing. I would almost recommend moving this home back away from the front facade, a front property line, to give this street a little more flexibility, some more air. So you have I recognize you're up in the back of the property line as well, the property setbacks, but I would prefer to see the project move back. If you're going to encroach on a particular setback, I don't think with this massing, which again I have issues with, is appropriate to be in the front yard setback. You don't have any rear yard neighbors that are particularly close. I would prefer to see this building move backwards in its location. I don't think left or right is, now you've moved the garage. Could you relocate this a little more towards the east? That is possible as well, to alleviate what is an excessive amount of mass in the side yard setback to I believe to the west, or maybe it's the south. I think those are my comments. I would say make the driveway gate, we have a kind of a code to be 50% transparent. So, while it's only 4 feet high, which I appreciate, you can make that a bit more transparent. I think another comment around materials. I think Joey was leading questions and trying to find a way to soften this building a little more by incorporating some additional materials in the facade. A stucco building of this proportion, of this scale, is a bit overwhelming as well. I think there are opportunities to find other materials that can be utilized to break up the mass a little bit more, to soften the material, to blend it into the background, into the landscape a little better. Right now, you're in a forest to some degree. The backdrop is a forest, and I think that it would be more appropriate to see materials that lended themselves a little closer to that, at least a portion of that, to soften that building envelope. I think those are the majority of my comments.
Thanks, Mark. Laura, how about you?
Hi. Well, I feel like there was definitely more of an effort to respond to the feedback that was given at the last meeting, with reducing the square footage some and reducing the massing some. I think the building still feels very dominant. I don't know that they had updated the story poles and went back there, but it didn't look like they'd been changed. But yeah, the massing contextually still feels a bit large for the houses surrounding it, based on the modern flat roof. And I think, but I mean, the front coming down to 24 helps. It's really tight to the street. So, you know, what Mark just touched on, like if that building shifted back a little bit, that could help some. And I do think that primary bedroom in the back, maintaining the taller ceiling really does impact the neighbor at 3 Hilgert. And it doesn't seem to be taking into consideration, you know, how that affects the neighbors. Just kind of feels like it's just kind of sticking to, it doesn't feel like it's budging much. And yeah, I mean, I think adding more landscaping, we touched on this with the questions, just to help take away the building's feeling of dominance, and then also to provide some privacy for the neighbors that are kind of having this implanted into their neighborhood. Would, I think having the extra planting and screening would really help. Those are my comments. You know, it's just a lot of glazing on those neighbors' sides.
Okay, so I will round it up, and I have just some very specific recommendations. First of all, I do applaud your efforts to comply with the suggestions we gave on the last round to bring down the plate height and to comply with the existing square footage. However, this situation of the 500 square feet of that porch is very much in question, because I've seen that house forever. I've lived here quite a long time, and I do not remember that having a roof on it either. I remember it was some sort of like an open feeling porch, and that has added 500 square feet that I really question. So that's just kind of a side note. I already feel like 3,200 is too much on that lot, and to bump it up to 3,800 is the reason why this keeps feeling too big. Every time we look at it, it just looks too big. The other reason I think it looks too big is because it's a modern stucco house in a context of vintage homes on a leafy street. It's not a busy street, it's a leafy street with vintage homes. This is a modern house replacing a vintage home. So I think when you do that, our town doesn't say you can't have a modern home, but when you do that, you are held to a different standard, because as I said the last time, a box reads differently than a home with a gabled roof and a peak and dormers. So my suggestion, it's great you lowered the plate height. I would lower it again a foot on each floor, and I don't think you have to pop up the primary bedroom. What I really care about, if we're going to talk about the design, and you are dead set on having this modern home on this street, let's get to the design features of what you have proposed. I really feel like the whole design needs to be warmed up. It feels very cold and very white and stucco. I feel like our town code really emphasizes using natural materials. You can have a beautiful modern home, but I was sort of excited by what I thought were the elevations that had arrows pointing to some sort of a wood siding. And I think this home could be really great looking if you took, for example, that center volume and you made that clad with the vertical or horizontal wood siding, or you broke up the very tall elevations that I believe that tall elevation is adjacent to Sharon Baker's home. If that were a warmer finish, it would not read so big. It would recede a little bit in her view if it had natural materials. So I very much recommend mixing in some wood with your design, wood and stucco, and incorporating that into every single facade, making it a little more interesting than just a stucco box on a street that has a lot of vintage homes. Okay, so then to the garage and the roof that has sliding doors going to it. I actually think when I look at that facade, that what seems very funny to me is that the line of the parapet does not continue all the way through to the left over the garage. And it in fact steps up to enclose that little deck that you claim is not a deck anymore. Why not bring that horizontal line all the way across over the garage and have that as a horizontal feature? Is that hello? I'm trying to speak with the architect if you can.
Oh, I didn't, yeah. Okay.
Is that concept clear to you when I say to bring the line, the horizontal line on the first floor all the way across over the garage?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to, Joey, is the darker colored overhang that goes left to right, that starts at the front door, moves its way leftward towards the garage, but then turns. Yeah, so it's an overhang that protrudes from the front of the home.
Right.
And you're suggesting, well, wow, what if that continued all the way across the face of the garage?
Something like that, because what I feel like is that plane that has no window in it, that's above the garage door, feels very stark. I actually feel like you could put another transom window over the sink in the bathroom and it would be actually a really nice feature for natural light. And it would kind of match that higher transom window that seems actually like not enough window on that left portion of the facade that is in the closet. And I get that's why you don't want huge windows in there, but maybe you could continue that line across in that portion that's part of the primary bathroom, and also continue the horizontal line of the fascia all the way over the garage, and literally just get rid of that, whatever that deck is with the parapet wall, lower it. That's my recommendation architecturally. I'm just trying to give you really concise feedback about design features. And my whole idea of that is to try to bring it down a little bit in scale. And I also agree with Mark's recommendation to just take the entire development and move it back a little bit, because again, when you're building a modern box in place of a vintage home with gabled roofs, it reads differently. I mean, you just look at the story poles, it looks very, very different and very big still. So, you know, just pull it into the lot, push it back, just make it smaller. And then we get out to the gates. I personally think they should be more transparent, not and that's part of the code as well. The gates are not supposed to be solid like that. You're supposed to be able to see through them, even if they're 4 feet high. That's an opportunity to use more natural materials, not necessarily a stucco wall. It could just feel a lot more natural in that setting. So I think I've pretty much hit everything there. You're getting closer, but it's still, the square footage, I think, is really still a sticking point, and the massing. Are you clear on our recommendations?
Yeah, if I can, respond somewhat. I don't know if this is the venue or the moment. I know this is the venue, but is this the moment where I can make a couple of comments in response to what was kind of come in a little bit here? I would want to share screen, but just note that the front of the home is not a planar front like it is currently. In other words, the facade of the existing home continues in the front yard setback for the duration of the width of the home. And in this case, the one thing that's similar with our proposal is that the right side of the entry section is what is at that front. And in fact, it does step back quite a ways to get to the front door, steps forward slightly for the left side, and then steps back yet again for the front of the garage. So in comparison, we have a site plan comparison that shows the front of the footprint of the existing home is in fact in front, and the house, the existing home, is what is establishing the setback, if you will. And we're behind that for a good 2/3 of the facade. So we're already stepped back. And I don't know that that's been noted. And it'd be cool if you guys saw, if that was acknowledged, that we're not front and center on the setback like the existing home is. The second point to that is from the plate height of the main level of the existing home, we have a mansard roof, which does tip back and arrives at approximately 24 feet at its apex, which we're not really changing that much, other than, yes, the plane is not tipping, but we do set back the second story of the right side, which is up at the setback. And we set that back, and then the rest of the home steps back again, like I said a second ago, from there. So we're certainly open to pushing the home back, but what that does is that impacts the usable open space or outdoor backyard in the back. And so what we're trying to do is find a way to balance or mediate the location of the front of the home with the location of the back of the home with the square footage that appears to be what we're entitled to have. Duly noted, Joey, on the comments about the front facade, especially above the garage where we have that area of finish or siding without any window articulation, which behind it is the master bathroom. I like the idea of continuing that transom-esque notion that's actually carried across, and in fact might even change the height of the windows that open into the closet and use that, creating a line, and create some transom up above to break up that larger mass of no window, which is above the garage door. I'm thinking that maybe what happens is there could be some sort of stepping down from the floor level of the master bathroom, so that it's clear that you'd have to kind of jump out to get down to the roof of the garage. And that might help convey the fact that there isn't an intention to use that roof for anything, because in fact, the level of it is below the level of the floor. And I think we might be able to concede there.
Well, I think if you brought that horizontal line across, it would no longer read as a balcony.
Okay, I'm not sure, and I think that'd be something we could study, because my concern would be we bring that straight across and there's still going to be a poking up section that would read as parapet, which happens to be coinciding with the floor level of the room inside. And not to assume that anyone would come back and say, hey, yeah, let's make that into a roof deck unpermitted. But if we made it more difficult for that to happen, I think we'd be working in the direction that you're asking us to go.
Yeah, actually, to tell you the truth, my comments really aren't so much of preventing a roof deck. It's more of a design. It's a look. It's a look that that huge expanse of stucco with no window, it just looks awkward and not as elegant as something that's a little more articulated. And a side benefit would be if you were forever prevented from having a roof deck there.
For sure, but taking all comments as relatively equally weighted after square footage in question, I think it might be easier for my client and us to try to prioritize what the most important things are and actuate redesign that aligns with what you're asking for and what you're recommending. And so on face value, I'm just simply saying, I'm hearing you. And I think we're hearing that some articulation and some additional attention to that section of the facade. Great, no problem. And I think we also heard, hey, it could be that you guys are still planning to have a deck out there, where last meeting, it was really clear, get rid of that deck.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
just a second ago, it sounded like, well, maybe it would be okay to have a deck right there. And I think that's going to create some confusion for my client.
No, I think that really, everyone feels no deck there. That was loud and clear from the last meeting.
Okay,
But
I wasn't
my-
sure that
My
I heard that
suggestions on the horizontal line and more articulation are actually independent from the desire to not have a deck.
Okay, but at the end, we have to merge all of these inputs together. So we can't look at it and we can say, hey, let's look at that. Great, let's look at this other thing, but then we got to look at it in a whole. And I'm trying to do that with you.
Okay. Okay. Is it possible? I haven't just, or do you have, I have some pictures I took yesterday of the story poles. And do you have some that are,
Yeah, I don't think the story poles are up to date.
okay. Because I have a couple where it's so clear to see that this is so much bigger than what's there. I think that's what's freaking everyone out.
Yeah, so I actually don't think that the story poles were updated. And so that's absolutely a to-do. It's going to need to be in order to come back and continue this dialogue.
Okay. Okay. So it won't be helpful for me to show my pictures from yesterday. Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think we're going to be able to make the point that there is a difference between what the story poles are there now and what's being proposed. I think we need to get back out there and get those up to date.
All right. So are you clear with our recommendations, or do you have any questions of us?
I don't. I appreciate your attention. I noticed that Mr. Sutro came in while we were talking, and I don't know if he has anything to add, but I'm obviously open to hearing that if time is permitting that, and if that's part of the process. Otherwise, it's cool.
No, I
Sure.
don't have-
Stephen, are you there? And would you like to opine on One Hilgert?
No, not having heard the presentation, I don't want to comment. I think that you guys have, from what I've heard, been thorough.
Okay. Okay, great. So do we want to bring it back to a recommendation to the town council? Basically,
Yeah.
pardon
Go
me,
ahead.
Mark.
Yeah.
What's your recommendation?
Yeah, I think the comments are it's still too big and we have to work on the massing and materials. Those three items are the three big takeaways, I think, from my perspective.
Yes, and I agree. And what about you, Laura?
You're on mute, Laura.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I think it's driven by the FAR thing. So part of me is like, if this is what they say is okay, then okay, but it's just triggering the scale of the building on the street to feel really big. So I'm a bit torn. But it sounds like everybody, the majority, want to see these changes still. So I think that makes sense.
So we are basically clear on all three of us saying that this needs to come back and it needs to get smaller and the materials need to be warmer. And basically you've hopefully taken good notes of the recommendations of this evening, Steve, correct?
Can I just add one thing, please?
Sure.
The story poles need to be revised.
Yeah, I mean, usually we don't even look at a project that the story poles aren't, they aren't accurate. So next round, they have to be accurate to what the drawings are showing. And the next round, if you could come with actual materials board that we could all go down to the town and see what the actual materials are, even if we are attending via Zoom, that would be great.
Affirmative.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for,
Thank you.
we'll get there. Okay, thanks.
One step at a time, guys. Have a
Yes,
great day.
yes, we will get there. Thank you so much. Okay, next project is 78 Shady Lane. And Mark, Gretchen, I think you have to recuse yourself from this as well. Hello?
Yes, he does.
Okay,
as well.
okay, so let's go through
And
the same.
Joey, I apologize. Joey, so do I. I've been asked to be recused as well from my
Yes.
proximity to my location. So both the marks are out.
Okay, so it's Laura, Stephen, and Joey. And if Rebecca, you could present it to us, that'd be great. And then we'll go through the same process with this project as well.
Great, thank you very much. You can see my shared screen. Yes, okay, good
Yes.
evening, ADR members. The project before you tonight is at 78 Shady Lane. The project site is a 9,696 square foot lot located at the intersection of Shady Lane and Locust Avenue. The lot is a relatively flat lot adjacent to single-family homes, and it is located in the flood zone. The property contains an existing single-family residence with a detached carport. Tonight, the applicant is requesting approval of demolition, design review, nonconformity permit, and a variance for a major renovation and remodel to the existing single-family dwelling. The project includes demolishing the existing 580 square foot carport and construction of a new 391 square foot garage. The garage is proposed in the side and rear yard setbacks, which is why the variance is required. I was going to turn on the pointer. There's the garage there in that corner. Two separate additions are proposed on the second story. A 117 square foot addition is proposed above an existing first floor roof on the right side of the home to match the lower floor roof. That is coming in over here. Additionally, a 19 square foot addition is proposed on the left side, which is sort of peeking in over here. Also above an existing roof eave. A 93 square foot addition is proposed on the first floor in between two sections of the right side of the structure. So sort of in this area in here. So the notices went out. Staff has received one email in support of the project from the homeowners at 84 Shady Lane and 3 emails from homeowners with concerns about the project. And those are all in your packet. And you did receive an additional email today with photos and a video from the property owner at 1 Locust. And tonight, staff is requesting that the ADR group discuss the merits of the project and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits of the project consistent with the design review criteria that are in your packet. And I am available for questions now or after the applicant has done their presentation.
Does anyone have any questions of Rebecca? Why don't we have the applicant do the presentation to us then?
Okay.
I just made you a co-host, Will. Tatiana, would you like me to make you one as well?
sorry, my name is Tatiana Miranova, and I'm the owner of 78 Shady Lane. And as Rebecca mentioned, the project we are presenting today is a remodel with addition and also demolishing of existing carport and constructing the garage. And I do have my architect, Will Jones, here, and he would be the best to take on describe. So please go ahead, Will.
Certainly. So the intent is to take a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house and increase it with the minimum amount of additional square footage to create a 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath house, which is why we need the additional masses to create that. In addition, the carport in the rear yard is substandard. It's too close to the house and fairly non-functional. It's supposed to be a 2-car carport, but only 1 car can really get in there. So in order to make the backyard more usable and also to bring the grade of the architecture up to the same performance as the regular house, we want to do a little garage that matches the house, the Craftsman house. And we want to put it in the back corner where it's out of the way. Because the existing carport is outside the setbacks, we assume that the new garage would also be outside setbacks, since there is no place to put a garage on the lot within the setback. And that's pretty much it in the summary.
Could you do a presentation with the plans and show us elevations and
Of
what?
course. Yeah, I'll need screen sharing.
I want
Rebecca,
to
do I have that?
You should be able to share screens.
Okay. All right.
You know, to speak to everything, FAR, what's existing, what's proposed, what's allowed.
Okay, all right. So the existing property allows 1939 square feet. Currently, with the house and the carport, we have a total FAR square footage of 2414. So one of the things that we're requesting is that we are able to use that 2414 square footage as it being a non-conforming lot. So we want to add some square footage to the house and take away some square footage from the carport. And doing that reduces the FAR by about 30 square feet, reducing it from 25% FAR to 24% FAR. Similarly with the building coverage, by removing the carport and making a smaller garage, even with the additional square footage on the first floor, increasing the building footprint, we are still reducing the building coverage by, it's going from 26% down to 24%. That was sort of the intent, to stay within what we believe that we can build and make as little impact on the property as we can. You know, like I said earlier, in order for us to put a garage in, something that I believe the town of Ross would prefer to have. Actually, I think it's a building code, you need a covered parking. We want to put the garage in this corner here so that you have easy street access, as opposed as to what it was, where you had to make a hard turn here to get into the carport. We also propose to remove the front room that used to be the porch. This is the original floor plan. This used to be the front porch, and somebody in the past decided to enclose it to make a nook. We're proposing to remove that nook for aesthetics, for useful purposes, and also to increase our ability to add the additional square footage, which we're doing right in here. So this was basically a utility sunroom art space. We're turning this into a bedroom. We're adding a bath. This is an existing bedroom. We're converting a little niche to be a bathroom. We're increasing the privacy toward the neighbors by removing a large set of windows here and a large window here, and creating just a small one so that we get both light in the bathroom and give privacy to our neighbor. We are redoing the kitchen, and we're adding a new deck on the back. Upstairs, the little pop out here basically is just to increase the landing. Right now, this stairway is way below code. I think there's only like 30 inches on this current landing. So we wanted to pop out just so that when you get up there and turn around, you can get up to the top stairs without turning sideways. On the other side, we wanted to give this suite this bedroom a suite feel. So we took and popped out over the existing building down below, following basically this contour, to give you an additional space for a master bath. Yeah, I don't know what else I can share. Rebecca, am I missing anything?
Is there an ADU on the property that's been mentioned a couple times and it's not showing on the drawings?
We are under a separate application. We are going to do an ADU in the corner of the property sorry, I'm struggling here.
If you just pull up the site plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Okay. In this corner right here, there's enough room for an 800 square foot ADU that we are going to, we would like to put under a separate application.
Okay. Is there any, does anyone on the ADR have any questions of the applicants?
No.
I can't see, if you could just stop sharing your screen, Will, that would be really helpful.
Okay, as soon as I figure out how, hang on. Sorry, people.
I can do it for you.
Thank you, because I cannot figure out how to do that. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Are there any questions from the ADR to the applicant?
I have a quick question, just, and maybe this is more for Rebecca. I would just like to know, I know how an ADU can be 4 feet from the property line. I just wanted to double check for garage structures. Is there any rule like that, or it's just supposed to be not in the setback unless there's findings for a variance?
Yes, there is a provision in the code that allows a garage to be 10 feet from the side and rear property line, provided that the garage is entirely behind the house. So in this case, the garage is behind the house, but it is not 10 feet from that side or rear property line.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the ADR? And how about comments from the public? And it's limited to 3 minutes each.
We have 2 people here in the town council chambers that would like to make comments.
Okay.
You could come to the podium. And please make sure the mic is on. And state your name and address, please, for the record. It's probably on.
Hello? Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. Oh, and I talk quiet. Can you hear? Okay. My name is Cheryl Enterman, and I live at 1 Locust Avenue in Ross. My husband, who couldn't be here tonight, we have lived next door. We've lived at 1 Locust for 35 years now. And so we'd like to respect your time. We've written 2 letters about this, but I'd like to bring some things forward. We were hoping to share the impacts of these proposed additions to you in person, but realized with time constraints we couldn't do that. But we would like you to come visit our house at any time. All the new construction proposed is away from the primary residence of 78 Shady Lane, creating maximum negative impacts to the neighboring properties. Alternate designs and ideas were forwarded to the applicant with 0 response. When we did do a small upgrade addition to the rear of our property, we moved that addition an additional 8 feet away from the property line at 78 Shady Lane in order to maximize privacy. The applicant has proposed all additions closer to our property on the south side. So our main concerns are the second story creates unnecessary privacy, light, and bulk impacts towards our property. The project is in a flood zone and must comply with FEMA. The project does exceed the permitted floor area ratio. The removal of this nook does not take away the 93 square feet for the porch. That was brought up to the applicant way back in March of 2022 by Matthew Weintraub, the town planner, yet they're still showing this reduction in floor area ratio. The variance findings cannot be made. The proposed ADU, which they are proposing 4 feet from both of our property lines at 80 Shady Lane and 1 Locust. They're also including stairs and a deck that do not fit within that 800 square feet. So, and they're also, their landscape plan stated specifically that no new plants will be added to this project. Therefore, no screening is being provided to these. So I think that's all I need to say today. I want to respect your time, and we really invite you to come view this from our property. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
We have another homeowner here that would like to share or speak.
Good evening. My name is Janet Redfield, and my husband Peter Redfield is here. We live at 80 Shady, so we're directly behind 78 Shady Lane. Our family has been in this home for 50 plus years, and we are quite concerned about privacy and the amount of mass that is going to be directly in front of our home, specifically right in front of our courtyard and front entrance of our home, which is due to the small garage that's being placed at the end of the driveway. And our concern is that the present carport could possibly be more convenient and not so difficult to get cars in. For many, many years, cars have been being put in that carport, and it is it's existing to the footprint and would not cause such privacy issues. We're concerned about how close this garage is proposed. Again, it's 4 feet from our front property line. And with the addition of the ADU also being 4 feet, we have that in the other corner of our property. So as you're walking out of our property from left to right, we will be looking at walls varying from 16 feet to 13 feet, 14 feet away from our front property line. And so for us, 4 feet from our property line. So for us, it's a major impact in terms of the way our home, our sense of privacy, our sense of security in terms of all kinds of different aspects, fire, noise, sunlight. These setback guidelines are set for a reason, and it seems as though with an existing carport that could be renovated and maybe make changes to back exits, which the owner has asked that we consider. This is the reason why they're not using the carport, is so that she can have a back exit from her home, and that it's difficult to put cars in that carport. I feel there is some room that some adjustments can be made to the design of the home, so that we are not directly looking at what is considered a small garage, but for us, it's quite a bit of our front property line. Again, I want to be considerate of your time, and those were our thoughts, and we appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else?
I don't see anybody here in council chambers, and I'm just doing one last look in the Zoom call, and I don't see anybody.
All right, why don't we bring it back to the ADR for recommendations? Stephen, how about you go first this time?
Okay, I have one question. So one of the two people that just spoke, I'm sorry, I can't recall your names. Are you in number 80? Or there's a letter in the packet from number 80. Is that right, Rebecca?
They are, if you're looking at the house, 78 Shady, they are one locust. And then there's a flag lot behind 78. And the second person who spoke, the Redfields, are 84.
I see. Okay.
Sorry, 80. They are 80.
They are 80. Okay. But in the packet is a letter indicating support from number 80. But I'm confused somehow. Is that right?
They're down Shady a bit. That is Sean Svensson.
So yeah, there is some confusion. 80, the second family who spoke, Janet and Peter Redfield,
Yes.
initially submitted a letter. So this project has been in with the town for a while now.
Yes.
Initially submitted a letter. They were concerned with the project, the massing, the bulk, privacy issues. They then submitted another letter saying they are in support of the project.
Okay.
And then they recently have changed their mind and have some concerns about the placement and the variance findings for that garage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry to belabor it. The reason I asked particularly about that, and I was happy to read in the report or the staff report that there was support from 80, because I think the people that are most affected by a choice to put the garage in that rear corner is number 80. And so I feel like, yes, the carport is a non-conforming element, but I think moving the garage exacerbates the non-conformity or makes the non-conformity worse. It makes it most worse, if that's a good phrase, for the people at number 80. And so if people at 80 said, no, it's great there, it's a perfect spot because of the way the driveways behave, that would make me comfortable with the swap or the trading out one nonconformity for another. But as it stands, if everything were neutral, I would be suspicious that exacerbating that nonconformity would be a bad thing. And if we have that particular neighbor worried about that, it makes me worried about that element. I don't have an issue, I don't think, with the new volume on the top of the building, in that I find it set back enough and generally scale appropriate to the neighborhood. I didn't look very carefully at the position of windows or at the privacy concerns kind of acutely connected to window locations and so forth. And so maybe there's something that could be done there. But I generally don't have a problem with the volume on the top or with the notion of trading around square footage that is existing on the property. The porch, kind of the changes at the front, I think it's great to get rid of that deck and make those changes. That seems fine. And so if it meets the letter of the law in mathematically, I can support the volumetric change. The ADU, we can't comment on, and so I'll just reiterate the fact that we cannot, and that's not part of our discussion tonight. And I think that's it for now. Joey.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I'll go next. I would reiterate what Stephen said, is that the garage is in the setbacks and it's exacerbating a nonconformity, even though it's far more useful in its new location.
Right.
It really impacts 80 Shady Lane. And even though we are not allowed to opine on ADUs, the bottom line is they are having 2 new buildings built right up 4 feet from their property line in front of where they enter their house. So it makes me really not inclined to have that garage anywhere but out of the setbacks. I also concur with Stephen in that I feel like the 2nd-story addition is very reasonable. It makes that house, I toured it with a potential client, and as built, it's fairly unusable upstairs. It really does need to be modernized and make that space up there somehow usable as a bedroom and bathroom. And I feel like this is a reasonable addition. It's out of the setback. It makes sense. I would then move on to opining about the actual design and the features of the design and the fenestration and the finishes. The old house at least had a combination of various materials with some shingles and siding and stucco that gave it some kind of charm and some sort of feeling of kind of an old school bungalow type of house that had been added onto. And I encourage you to go take a look at the original windows and to try to mimic some of the charm that exists in the existing home. I find the proposed west elevation with that one little window and just a complete blank, even though it's shingles, there's no windows up there. It just has no character. And so I think if you're going to add mass up there, the finishes really have to be, they have to be more detailed and more charming, for lack of a better word. So those are my comments on the project. Laura?
Yeah, the only thing I would add, I mean, the additions to the main house seem fine. I think just the garage 4 feet from the rear neighbor's house, I just am not sure what the findings are for why that would be necessary. And especially if they are saying like that they have an issue with it, based on what Rebecca had said before, where the garage can be 10 feet from the side or rear yard. I think from the side, maybe it's not an issue to keep that 4 feet, but I think from the rear where it is closest to the house at 80, it would make sense to try to maintain that 10 feet. So that would be really the main thing I wanted to add.
So Laura, could you, would you recommend approval with the one modification of moving the garage such that the rear setback be 10 feet to the proposed new garage there?
Personally, I would be, yes, I would say that's fine.
And Joey, would you or no? You would think that they should either meet the side and rear requirements or reconstitute it in its similar location where it is now?
I could find findings for a variance on the side yard setback because it's a driveway. And that doesn't really affect them that much, but there has to be a way better planting plan around this entire house. My recommendation would be that this can't go straight through to council. It has to come back with a very detailed landscape plan of how they are going to commit to screening this entire development. So I could agree to moving the garage so that it's 10 feet out of the rear setback, 4 feet out of the side setback, come back with a really good landscape plan. And I'm going back to the finishes, the white first story and the dark brown second story and the dark brown trim. I think the whole thing needs to read like a little bit more unified color wise and just tone down so it recedes. The bright white stucco contrasting with the dark brown, I just find it to be a little garish. So is that clear to the architect and applicant what our recommendations are?
Yes, may I just ask something, or should I wait for my turn?
No, please.
Well, you can ask it.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring to your attention that and the back of my garage is actually behind the driveway of 80 Shady Lane. So it's not in front of the house, it's behind the driveway and behind their garage. So it's away from the house.
It's just, okay, so we actually are not supposed to re-engage, but it doesn't matter. It's still in the setback.
You understand?
Yeah, it is in the setback. That just I just heard the comment that it's encroaches on the entrance to the house, and it is not. There's a large driveway behind, and this driveway actually L-shaped. So
Okay.
it seems like it was a perfect place to place a driveway, to place a
Okay.
garage.
So thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
Are you and your architect clear on our recommendations?
Yes.
I am. I have one question when you remarked on the color of the house being stark white. It is currently stark white. We propose to mellow it out to make it a little more cream colored, something that would balance with the browns that we're proposing for the shingles and the skirt. We do want to keep a strong wood element in the style of the Craftsman style. It has a little bit of mission detailing with the stucco down below. I'm gonna have to put on my hat to see what we can do to make that facade a little more spiffy.
How about just shingling the whole thing?
I would be up for that if Tatiana would want to consider that.
Well, I would like to keep current Craftsman look, and it's partially shingled and partially stuccoed. So, and I really like this look. So, if I would like you guys to support me in this, so I don't want it all shingled because that's not how it is now. It has some wood elements and it also has some stucco elements, and that's what we're actually keeping. Combination of wood and stucco.
I don't think anyone is trying to actually copy the style that's there now, because it's probably not like our finest style around the town. I think we want to make it even better. So
No, I don't know. I liked my house and I wanted to be consistent.
Okay, so that
my opinion.
you and your architect will figure out a way
We
to
will, yes.
make it attractive. So are there any more recommendations from the ADR, or can we make a recommendation to the town council now?
I think we can make a recommendation, meaning, but you suggested, Joey, that you would like to see it back with the landscaping plan and the adjustments made before it goes to council. Is that right?
Yes, and a materials board.
Oh, we provided material boards.
Well, this is my own vote on this, is I don't like the
Oh,
materials.
I see you on the new one. Okay.
I don't personally approve of the materials shown. Stephen and Laura may feel differently, but I definitely think before it goes to town council, it has to come back with a complete landscaping plan that actually shows the ADU on the plan with the appropriate screening.
Well, we have ADU on a different application, so should we combine it?
We were
Just-
told to separate it.
It's nice to see the outline and how you're going to landscape the whole project, because we lose control over what these things look like if they're not documented anywhere.
Okay, we can do that. I know that Tanya wants to keep it very simple, so we can add some screening elements. But unless she changes her mind, the rest of the property is just going to lie natural and mulched. Will that be okay, or is that an aesthetic that?
I think we are all asking for more screening and not natural. Like
Okay.
actually plant things and irrigate them and make them grow.
Okay, all right. We'll definitely do that. We'll use plants that are xeriscape style plants, so they won't need irrigation. But we'll screen the neighbors.
Okay. I just think it needs a lot of screening.
You got it. The neighbors want it, we'll give it to them.
Great. Any more comments? Everybody? Okay, so you're clear on our recommendations.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Well, okay. I think Mark Kretschnit is in charge of the next one.
Thanks, Joey.
I just, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say I'm out of town with family, so I actually have to leave the meeting now.
Laura, thank you for your time tonight. So we had a quorum for those two items that we wouldn't have been able to help the applicants without your presence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice night.
Have a nice vacation. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, the next project is 24 Allen Avenue. The town will do a brief presentation, and we've already seen this. So really, the applicants can make it relatively brief and just tell us what the changes are. We've read through your letters and bullet points that you nicely sent over to us prior to tonight. Thank you. Rebecca, on to you.
Thank you. Nishant Tioni is here, and he will actually do.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Okay, I guess I can't share my screen.
Rebecca, I'm sorry, there's
Yeah,
a weird
I thought
background noise that maybe you can mute if you mute everyone except for the speaker.
Yes, I am trying to find Nishant.
I can raise my hand.
There you are, to make you a co-host. Okay, you should be able to share your screen. I will make sure everybody is muted while you are doing that.
Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. This project is the 24 Allen design review and variance. You have seen this project before. I'm not going to go super into it. I'm going to let the applicant go over what changes they've made in response to ADR comments, but as an overview, the project is a design review for a remodel and relocation of an existing deck, construction of a new in-ground pool and patio, and installation of new landscaping. And again, there have been some changes. The applicant has a presentation, so I'm going to, we can either hand it over to them or I can pull it up, whichever one works for you, Rebecca.
I can pull it up.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a little
Can you hear me?
feedback coming from you, Nishant.
Okay, let's hand it over to the applicant then.
Great, thank you. I think you need to stop share screening, and then I will do it. Hi, everyone. I wanted, oh, it says the host disabled participant screen sharing.
I'm making you a co-host right now.
Awesome, thanks.
And I assume, is Brad also presenting?
He is on, yes, and I wanted to
I'm here.
apologize. Yeah, at our last meeting, I was ill and Brad was not here. And so I just wanted to apologize, and I did want to take the time to kind of walk through, we'll do it really quickly, but walk through You know, we heard your feedback. We actually, I think, made some improvements and made some changes we want to review with you. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Robin Looning. I've been in Ross with my husband, Warren, since 2011. We have 2 boys, and our oldest boy graduated from Ross School K through 8, and our youngest boy just started his first day of 8th grade today. So we are longtime Ross residents, love our neighborhood so much, and really want to stay. So I'll first start by just saying, you know, we heard your feedback. We got it. We removed the bocce court, we removed the fire pit, removed the barbecue, and we removed the arbor. We also heard the feedback around the pool equipment. And actually, I just want to, we've submitted for a minor exception. If this pool gets approved, that the pool equipment has neighbor support, that is not a problem. And I can go into some more details there from the neighbor perspective. I don't want to go through all of these bullets because the rest of the deck goes through that. But first, I'll just turn it over to Brad to give a little overview of the project and where we are.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I think the main point of what we want to talk about here is the appropriateness of the neighborhood context. And so we went through and we did some studies about the adjacent neighbors. And if you go down to slide number 6, I think it's the best example of how to explain this. And so we went through and we highlighted all the property lines and all of the setbacks for each project. And it became very clear, and I kind of figured that it was that each of these parcels in this neighborhood, every single parcel is violating the terms of the setback. And especially clear on this was that pools on number 32, number 34, number 36, and number 21 are very much similar to what we're proposing. 32, it looks like, you know, the pool is right on the property line. The other pools are set very close to property lines, and number 21, the pool is pretty close to the property line too. I also want to clarify that on our plan, that there's been some discussion about how far the pool is set back from the property line. And it's set back 6'3". There was some question about 2 feet from the property line, and that's not correct. It's 6 feet 3 inches from the property line. The other point that we wanted to make and be real clear about is what is around where the pool is on the adjacent neighbors. And on number 10, the most impacted, there's a carport right there with a bunch of storage all up in that corner of the lot. And there's, you know, it's very far away from the main residence. On lot number 22, right in the corner is a garage that it might double as an office, or I'm not exactly sure what it's used for, but the main living space is way up by the street frontage. Number 34, where we're getting close to, is a vegetable garden and very far away from the main residence. And number 32, we have a pool kind of adjacent to the ADU on this project and very far away. And I think, you know, what's really important on this project is that we do have all of the neighbors' support. There's not one neighbor that is saying they oppose our project, which I find to be almost non-existent in projects in Ross. The other part that I wanted to get into a little bit is that we have done pools, and a lot of them are mine that I've had approved through the ADR and planning and permit, and they're all built at this point or in the process of construction. And, you know, I can make a list, but it's 45 Bolinas, 105 Bolinas, 70 Ivy, 10 Ames, 21 Fernhill, and 74 Shady. So all those projects, I went through a planning process, and all these projects are built, and they're all beautiful projects. So I think that I think Robin wanted to talk a little bit about the neighborhood too, about there's some, it's not a typical neighborhood in Ross. It's really close to the school. It's loud. Neighbors are on top of neighbors. And I'll let Robin talk about
Yeah.
this. 'Cause they live.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is we have, I mean, as you can tell by the support we've got for this project, like we have a really close community. There's not a day that goes by where I don't hear, children in the neighborhood. The neighborhood's teeming with children. Plus, we're on the Ross Common, right, where I hear that xylophone play every single day, and that's fine. Like it's part of living sort of in this high density area of Ross. We're also subject to and I'm not complaining about this. I'm just showing that the context here. We've got a Live on the Common project or concert coming up. This was, publicized on Instagram by the Ross Property Owners Association. Love it. But this is part of living on Allen Avenue. We will hear this in our backyard. So will all of our neighbors. We've got a cocktail party, sponsored by the PTO, live music and cocktails on the Ross Blacktop. That's, we're almost in sort of an urban suburban area here. And so to add a pool in a backyard where most of the other backyards have pools, like the incremental sound impact is minuscule. I did want to say, just to note that like all these neighbors are supportive. And also that we did hear the feedback from ADR around privacy and that sort of thing. We always had planned to put in some privacy plantings, but we've now documented the privacy landscaping along the fence line of 10 and 22 Allen. On 34 Allen, there's already ample screening. There's nothing that our screening would add to that. So we don't plan on doing it on that side. We'd be happy to do that. But I just wanted to show like, we are not in an area where people expect silence ever. We've got kids coming to and from school. We've got birthday parties on the evenings. I don't know if you know, but it's a hangout, the Ross Playground. We hear kids there. They're hanging out. It's a great, safe place to be. This isn't a place of silence, I guess. I talked about the equipment. I also wanted, one of the other things that came up in the last meeting was around drainage. And we had this in place, but we didn't cover it well enough. I just wanted to let you know that we have a bioretention pond or bioretention basin that's designed. It meets the town of Ross criteria. And also that, again, I was sick and Brad was gone and there was incorrect information provided about the deck cover, which has always been planned to be impermeable. We'll respond. We understand.
It's meant to, all the patios are permeable, not impermeable.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Did I say it wrong? Again. Yeah. And we looked at other projects that have been approved. I also pulled up, there was a memo in the Ross, the town of Ross memo published in March 2017, again, just showing the precedence around this. It feels like this should be supported. So I just wanted to put that out there. Anything else you'd add, Brad?
I don't think so. I'm happy to answer any questions and provide feedback moving forward and go through any slides that you might want to be gone through. And, I think we covered it pretty well.
Thank you, Brad and Robin. Do any ADR members have any questions for either Brad or Robin or Rebecca? Okay, I will then open it up to the public. If anyone wants to speak, you can assume we've read through your letters of support if you've written them. If anyone wants to speak, now is the time to raise their hand. Okay.
Sorry, I just had to stop the sharing. I can't see anybody until the screen stops sharing. I do not see anybody with their hand raised.
Okay, I will then bring it back to the ADR for our recommendations. I'll go first since I've been doing nothing for the last hour. I certainly appreciate Robin's very nice attitude towards her neighborhood. And I agree with both Robin and Brad that the neighbors all have pools that are not in accordance with the town setbacks. It's a relatively noisy social neighborhood. There's no opposition from any of the neighbors regarding the pool. So, I don't think anybody was harmed by the pool, so I'm fine with it. However, the town council has to get comfortable and approve something that's built, pretty much 100% in the setbacks. And if the town council can do that, fine, because almost everybody else in the neighborhood, in that little neighborhood, has that. It seems ridiculous, but that's just the way the neighborhood is. And if no one's complaining or cares that there's a pool that close to them because they all have pools close to each other, I'm fine with it.
I'll go next, Mark, if you like.
Please.
I've been looking at the Google Earth view and kind of just noticing how really the spot where the pool is suggested is surrounded by freestanding garages of the neighbors, and then by the loop driveway of, I'm not sure what address that is, but number 10. And so I just feel like I agree with you, Mark, and everything you said, but I would take it a step further and not just leave it at kind of a 50-50 with the council, but I think that contextually, I can recommend approval based on the context, based on that it doesn't do any additional harm. It's not breaking the pattern of development, and that it feels like it works in this spot. So I would be able to support it as proposed.
Mark or Joey, who would like to go next?
Mark?
Sure. I think it's the same comment I made last time. I just don't think there's a lot of supports at pool. And while Brad, and Rob and I appreciate the neighborhood characteristics. I've been down there plenty of times. I will say that I haven't supported many of these pools of Brad's in the past. Sorry, Brad. And I think this puts us as a design review committee in a real bind. I can't disagree necessarily with Stephen or Mark's points. However, I can't, as a design review member, make findings that we should be putting pools entirely in setbacks. So I would, I'm going to stay with my current statement of the project doesn't support a pool there based on our town guidelines. What I would encourage our town to do is to take a hard look at what pools, right? Brad, we used to call it I used to refer to you as the pool in the setback guy, because we've seen so many of them in the past. I've been on this design review committee for 12 years. I've seen so many pools and setbacks, it's crazy. And in some circumstances, I think very limited, I've understood the conditions and said, yeah, that seems to make sense. But I think the town's got to do something about this to give us better guidelines, to understand that if you have a rear yard setback, it means you can't put stuff in the rear yard setback. If you have a side yard setback, it means you can't put stuff in the side yard setback. Unless there are absolutely, unbelievable circumstances. In this case, there aren't. They want a pool. There's not an appropriate place out of the setbacks to put a pool. That doesn't mean they get a pool. I mean, so that's my stance. I understand everyone's point about neighborhoods and sounds and et cetera, et cetera. I wouldn't go down the avenue of claiming that that's a problem. But as a design review committee to look to leverage the guidelines that we are given within the town, I can't come up with findings on why this should have a pool. It just doesn't support it in my viewpoint. So I think you'll go to the town council if the applicant chooses to do that. Who knows? Maybe there's a great chance of getting it. But I can't see that I can't make those findings. So I stand as I did last time. Pools in the same spot. I have the same exact feeling. I knew the pools were adjacent. I knew the context. I know the neighborhood. So my opinion hasn't changed.
Thanks, Mark. Joey?
So, my gut feeling is pretty much the same as Mark's. You walk onto that lot and it's just so small. You cannot imagine one more thing being put there. I very much heard and listened and was open to your presentation, the applicant's presentation. And while that pool does not hurt anyone and everyone's in favor of it, I'm starting to get really tired of us having to make these calls that are so far, they're so non-conforming with our town codes that I think this needs to go to town council and they need to amend the codes, or they need to figure this out, because what's happening, like Brad's big list of all the pools that he's gotten approved in the setbacks, every time we approve one of these, it comes back to bite us and it's used the next time as a precedent. So the town just needs to realize, like, there's going to be a bunch of pools in the setbacks. The Jones applied for one on Lagunitas Road that was quite a bit in the setback next to a neighbor, and the neighbor was supportive of it. And we still said, no, that's too close. It's in the setback. The last thing I will say is that I actually feel like it's very ironic that people that spend a lot of money to buy giant lots, and they have huge lots where they have their pools entirely out of the setbacks, they're not afforded the same favors as people who have a much smaller, less expensive lot. Because generally when these big ones come before us, we make them stick to 40 feet off of the rear setback. I mean, we make them really adhere because they have these giant lots. And that just doesn't seem fair. I think this is something I'm now like on a pulpit. This is something that the town council has to decide. And this one strikes me just off the cuff as really shoving way too much onto a lot. And again, we're not supposed to mention the ADR or ADU, but once you put that ADU there and you try to jam a pool in there, there's like no room to walk around that pool. But that's your prerogative. It's your lot. And I say, go to the town council and give it a shot. Just, it seems really crowded to me.
Am I allowed to speak?
Sure.
Really, your time's done and there's not supposed to be public comment now. You can make a very quick comment, Robin.
Well, I guess I did just want to mention that 45 Bolinas, right? Where we've very similar. I mean, actually, even they've got a higher, they were 2 feet from the property line and they had 29.2% of lot coverage. And our project is farther from the property line and would have 26.2% of coverage with the buyer retention. It, from an equity perspective, you're right. It doesn't feel fair, right? If something like that is approved and or supported and ours isn't, it doesn't feel fair. And on the ADU piece, like, it also doesn't feel fair that a family that's supporting the town's, affordable housing requirements because of the sequencing of projects, faces repercussions.
All right. Thank you, Robin. And I do agree with you and everything Joey and Mark have said. The problem that Joey points out quite appropriately is that when you let someone build a pool that's 2 feet from the property line, then everyone in town, like yourself, it's sort of like having a teenager, like, well, they got a cell phone, so I should get a cell phone. So then everybody has cell phones in first grade. And it goes on and on. But we've made our recommendations. Thank you. And Rebecca, you can basically say that the ADR was sort of split and the town council needs to either, approve a pool that's built 100% in the setback in a neighborhood where almost everybody has a pool of that same nature, or they can abide by the current setback rules and not approve it. And it's sort of up to town council to decide that.
Thank
you. And now,
thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move on to DeWitt Drive. And let's see, we will wait till after this project to maybe take a short break if people need it. But just for the applicants, just so they're aware, like, it's obviously a very big project, a very big lot. But we don't need to delve into every aspect of the planting. We're usually concerned about the general architectural appearance, what happens if there are any variances, which in this case, I don't believe there are, although it was very difficult to open the file. So Rebecca, when you put who's ever putting the files up, both this and some of the other files this time, I kept having them crash on me when I was looking at them online. So I'm not sure if there's some way we can reduce the file size when they get uploaded so they work better with the town website. It would be very helpful going forward. So do your presentation, but probably, just do a very brief presentation of the project, and then we can ask questions about the various things after you've gone through the various vantage points.
Yeah,
Great.
sounds good.
Thank you. Well, Rebecca, why don't you start out, and then you can turn it over to the Coates and their team.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, and duly noted about the file size. Thank you. The property before you tonight is located at the corner of Shady Lane and DeWitt Avenue. To note, recently a lot line adjustment was approved, which includes this blue box sort of above the highlighted parcel. It's actually part of 3 Upper Ames, and the lot line adjustment was approved by the town. It's currently getting recorded now at the county. So the lot size is up to 99,980 square feet. Tonight, the applicant is requesting demolition, design review, and an ADU application for approval to demolish the existing 11,232 square foot residence and all of the accessory structures on the lot, and are proposing construction of a new 14,694 two-story with basement single-family residence and a new 1,200 square foot ADU. They're also proposing a detached garage and sort of these pool house pavilions. The existing property has many mature trees, most of which will be retained, and new trees are proposed to create more of a park-like setting. The home is proposed in a very similar footprint as the existing. The most significant change with this project consists of the vehicle access is going to be taken off of Shady Lane as opposed to where you enter the property now at DeWitt. We also have at town an application for an address change from 2 DeWitt to 1 Shady Lane. The materials include wood siding painted Benjamin Moore Simply White. Windows and doors are proposed in dark anodized bronze, and the roof is proposed in comp shingle in a charcoal color. In terms of public outreach, the homeowners emailed, went in person, and texted 22 neighbors within the vicinity of their property, which is in your staff report and my staff report that you all have. All of the neighbors that they were able to communicate with are in support of the project. Perhaps the most significant change was from the church on Shady Lane regarding the noise at the pickleball court. And you will see that the pickleball court is included in the renderings. However, it is not included as part of this project. The project applicant has removed the pickleball court as reflected in the site plan, and if the project is recommended for approval tonight, the pickleball court will be removed from all of the renderings when it does go to town council. And tonight we are requesting that the ADR group discusses the merits of the project and provide a recommendation to the town council consistent with the design review criteria, and I'm available for questions.
Thanks, Rebecca. Can you turn it over now to the design team?
I am doing that right now. Michael, you should have co-host abilities.
So we can share?
You can share, yeah. You're not at David's computer, right?
No, we're here together.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, you are a co-host.
Hang on a second. Oh, this is it right here. Okay, all right. Okay, so my name is David Kotzebue, and I'm the architect for the project. And I'm here with Michael Yandel, landscape architect, and we're actually in his office co-presenting. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your time and thank you for the opportunity to present this family home for Tom and Linda Coates. We put a lot of energy into it, and as you mentioned, it is a rather large site, and we're proposing I think a commensurate style and type of house that the site demands. Rebecca mentioned the neighborhood outreach. We did a lot of neighborhood outreach. We've received written support from all the adjacent neighbors, including the church across the street and a few to the south of the Lagunitas, 140 Lagunitas, and I think 2 Allen. So let's go to the next one. So this is the neighborhood context.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second? If you are sharing plans, we cannot see them.
Oh, you can't see the screen? Hang on a second.
No. So go to share screen and then click on the plans, and then you have to click on the little button in the right-hand corner that says share.
Come on.
Or I can pull the plans up if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't you do that, Rebecca? What have we done here? No, I just got to go back to my same screen here. Which one are we on here? Is that that's Bellagio. Let me get, sorry. Let me hit my share screen. Right. Continue. Do this. All right. You guys got them now?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see that now. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so this is just a Google Earth image. It shows the neighborhood context, and I think it gives an indication of the mature trees that really surround the perimeter of the site. What we've done here is we've organized the house with a central axis and a 2-story element, and basically centered in the 2.4 acres. And then the building steps down to the edges to single-story structures. And then, as Rebecca mentioned, we are proposing the new driveway access off of Shady Lane. And then as you come into the property, you'll pass the ADU, which is a freestanding building nestled between 2 mature oak trees. And so the impact from the street and the town, what the town sees from the outside, is really just single-story structures. The ADU, the detached garage, and the pool house. And these single-story structures are layered with screen planting from the street to the property. And the main portion of the main house with the 2-story portion is virtually unnoticeable from the street. So you go to the next one. So this is the existing context, and you can see the mature planting. There is a stand of redwoods north of the tennis court that will be keeping some, and that's where we're going to provide our access to the new residents and the new entry. So if you go to the next one, this shows approximately the same view with our proposal rendered in the existing landscaping. So I think you can see how it does nestle into the site in a very similar fashion that it's done now. So this is a dimension drawing where the shaded portions are the existing house, and of course our proposal is shown in the bold line. And I just wanted to point out that the closest, for One Ames, the distance between their main house and our front door is literally 250 feet. And the distance, let's say, from 3 Upper Ames, their main house, to the corner of what we're proposing to be the gym is 225 feet. So we feel that this house is again, virtually unnoticeable to the neighbors also.
And centered within sight.
And centered inside, and in essence with where the existing house is.
Do you need us to go through floor plans?
No, definitely not.
Thank you.
So this is a comparison view of the existing is shown on top, at the new down below. We're using Michael's concept of entering from the north and living on the south. So these windows that face north will give the circulation areas of the plan some nice indirect northern light. The house is rendered in painted white drop siding. Is proposing like 1x10 or actually 5/4 by 10 with a deep scallop reveal. We did drop off the actual materials to town hall. They should be sitting there if someone wanted to see them.
They are.
And then of course we have the charcoal color roof that recedes. Okay. And then this is the rear elevation with the same comparison showing the, similar scale than what exists. And then the side facing east shows the single-story garage layered up to the two-story element with the cascading hip roofs and the articulation that we're providing in the building form. And again, we repeat that on the west side. And this view is mainly just to show that it shows the pool pavilions from outside, but also shows that the house in the background is another layered element beyond.
The main concept on that is that we wanted the pool house to not feel like another structure out there. And it feels more like two garden pavilions open in the center. So the axis goes completely through the site and they view a little viewing garden that butts up against a window.
And then these are the single-story structures, the ADU on top with the detached garage. And again, the bottom view shows from looking from Shady with the detached garage in the foreground and the ADU to the right of that. And then this is the rendered view of the rear. Again, showing the layering effect of
from the pool houses back to the back of the house.
And then the dusk view of the private yard.
We need to do a little more work on that. There's a lot of trees in the backside that actually crest above that roof line, but we're still working with the render.
And here you have the landscape.
So here's the landscape, and I will do it very, very quickly, just programmatically. We have the new entry. We have two parking courts, well, parking areas, one for guests, and it occurs in the same location as the current gravel parking traditionally has been for the house. Then there's the parking area by the two garages. We have assorted modest scaled patios for living room, family room. We have cutting gardens. We have vegetable gardens. You can see that in this plan, we have pulled the pickleball out of the program, which lets that corner breathe really nicely. And then the pool is centered on the axis of the house. It's 18 by 60. And yes, tons of planting all the way around. Important for me that we're going to be bringing in really large plant material, valley oaks, live oaks, and olives to make the house look like it's built around those trees. I don't think we necessarily need to go through this other than materials, limestone paving, brick on the columns, at the entry columns, limestone driveway, gravel paths. We should note that we have worked with the Conikers along the, what call it, their common lot line. It's right over here. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not.
Yes, we
We
can.
work with the landscape architect and with the Conikers. We'd like to do a cedar fence solid there, stained black ebony. That will both be planting both sides. So we've worked with their landscape architect, and they've worked with us to develop a buffer along that assures privacy to both properties. And again, we have support of all of our surrounding neighbors. These are just quick shots of the entry gate on Shady. We like the idea of it being white. It's kind of a dark space right now as you look at that. And this gate goes right where the existing curb cut is, which is important also to note. It's already there. We're just changing the character of the gate.
And we're really kind of reimagining this entire site and home, if you look at it. The secondary set of gates, that goes into the owner court and is not visible to the street. There's a little side section through Shady Lane that shows the street trees, additional trees that we're putting in, hedging on both sides. We will be continuing the laurel hedging all the way up Shady to the new entry with the idea of just being very simple. It's English laurel, it's the elm trees, and then it's our additional plantings on the backside in the property. And this little vignette over here is just a little trellis structure that sits in the secret garden.
Mike, sorry, let me interrupt you. Before you go on from that slide, I was a little confused. You had two different gates there.
Yep.
One is the more transparent gate, the top one that you said we would see from the street, and the secondary gate we don't see from the street. I'm not sure where that secondary gate is. Can you just show that on the?
Right there.
Oh, it's okay, interior, just above the letter F there.
Yeah, so you come in here, the notion was that guest traffic comes this way, drop off, park, but the owner comes in and then takes this fun little curve right here, and it's blocked off right there. So you're visually, you're not looking into that.
Got it. Thank you for the explanation.
And this is our planting plan, and like all my projects, it'll be beautifully planted.
I will. Thank you to both of you. This is probably a good time, if it's okay with you two, to open it up to ADR questions, if there are any.
I just want to get straight the land transfer. So we had can you go back to the site plan? Oh, yeah.
This one?
The previous one, yeah.
Yeah.
Or the one that shows the entrance. So we just saw One Ames and there was a lot of controversy over the road there into the Conikers, that they picnic there and they use it a lot. Have they sold that to this property and they're not entering there anymore?
Correct. That was the half acre that was purchased.
Okay.
That rectangle that sits up
Right.
there. And it really was fortuitous for us, because it really allowed us to create, I think, a proper entry into the property. I never liked the way it came in off of DeWitt, kind of in the back of the house, very odd. This new driveway presents the front of the house beautifully. And then we have great buffers all the way around.
Right. Yeah. It works well for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. That was my question.
Are there any other ADR questions?
Real quickly, can you guys describe the height of I see the story poles out there on the garage closest to Shady Lane, and then the height of the ADU on that corner? Just
The height of the detached garage matches the height of the garage that's attached to the house. That area where that detached garage is going is where the tennis court is basically, and it's sunk down maybe 3 feet. And that's where we're building up. We're going to, fill the area where the tennis court is and make it essentially a flatter lot out of this. And that gets us above the base flood elevation by quite a bit also. So those are story poles that show a single story garage. And then the ADU is a similar gabled form, but it's 15'6" above to the ridgeline above the natural grade. And the ADU also sits above the base flood elevation.
Sure.
So, and
Thank
Mark,
you.
I'm not sure you said the ridge height of the garage that Mark was asking about.
I don't have it on the top of my head, but it's on the drawing.
How tall is it?
Yeah, just how tall is it? Yeah, I was just curious. Didn't
you say 15'6"?
Well, the ADU is 15'6" to the ridge. The garage is a little taller. I think it's.
Yeah, it feels a little taller on the side.
Which one do you want?
Thank you. That's fine. And then the ADU seems to, I think, Michael, you mentioned the oaks down in that corner. There's a beautiful oak in that corner where the ADU is, and that's I'm assuming is being preserved, but I couldn't discern from the planting plan how close in proximity are you building the ADU to that tree? Because we have seen in the past, like tree mortality by, mistakenly having buildings way too close to them.
Right.
So I'm just curious how much.
We're doing several different things here. We had the arborist out, number one, and we have an arborist plan included in this. Construction on this would be, it wouldn't be spread footing. It would be slab on grade. So that his whole thing was he doesn't want us to do a lot of cutting.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
In that area.
Yeah. Okay, so you got that covered. I'm assuming you have it covered because that's kind of one of those heritage oaks.
Oh yeah, there's two great oaks there. There's one right out in front of the new, in front of the house that frames it just beautifully, and then several more on the back.
We that's one of the reasons the ADU is staggered like that, to allow for the oaks. And we do have the opportunity, since we have that annexed parcel, to slide it to the south slightly to clear that oak tree if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just encourage whatever extra buffer you can give, because those are, to some degree, non-replaceable.
Yeah, really nice.
I think those are one other just question you mentioned on the materials, brick on the columns, and it'd be kind of just worthy of seeing where exactly the extent of that is, and is that carried around in any other way in the, it was on the entry columns.
So these entry columns are brick, and then the chimneys in the house are also white painted brick.
Yeah. So any masonry we're using in the vertical plane is painted white brick. There's not a lot of it. It's the chimneys that come up through the roof. And then there's a chimney of the family room that faces the cutting garden.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's not the columns that we were just looking at.
Columns are wood.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, that helps. Okay, I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you. Are there any other ADR questions before I open it up to the public? No. Okay, if anyone in the public would like to make a comment or has a question, now is your time. You can raise your hand via Zoom. It looks like Rebecca is in the hall alone, so no hands there.
I am alone in here, and I do not see any hands raised on the Zoom room.
Okay. In that case, I'll bring it back for comments and recommendations from the ADR. Would anyone like to go first?
I will.
Okay, Joey, go ahead.
I think it's a beautiful plan, and it's really nice that it's way out of the setbacks. It's a huge property. You really don't see much of it from the road. I do question, like, it's a lot of white, even though nobody can see it. It's just we still have to talk about that it's all one material and it's approaching the size of a small hotel. All white, which is, of course, the owner's prerogative, but I wonder if there's a way that you could soften up the development a little bit, like maybe make the outbuilding stone or something where it's just not this enormous white structure that does start to approximate the scale of a hotel. I also think with that much roof, and given that is one of the only things that people can see, you might consider a more elegant roof material and not just asphalt shingles. You might think of doing a material that is something more like slate or some kind of approximation of slate.
Slate would be great.
Pardon me?
Slate would be great.
Slate would be great. Something not metal, but a really elegant roof material, because that is really what the public sees. And I think that articulation, with slate and maybe beautiful copper rain gutters or something, just would give it a little bit more character than this giant white, beautiful, but very big and very white set of structures. So that's basically my commentary. I think it's beautifully set on the landscape, and I have no doubt it will be landscaped very well. There you have it.
Thanks, Joey. Stephen, since you spoke up, would you like to go next?
Since I interrupted? Yeah, sure. I agree with Joey completely. I think it's really well designed. I think it's great. I think we can totally recommend approval, or I can recommend approval as is. I was disappointed to see what I think is a representation of painted gutters. I think it would be really great to have like a round copper gutter. It would just give it some substance. And I think slate would be really great as well, like Joey is thinking, because there's so much roof that's kind of visible because the property is so large and you can get an advantage of it. Those are just design suggestions though, and I think we can recommend approval. I can recommend approval without them, but I think it's great. And that's all.
Thanks, Stephen. Mark?
Sure, yeah, not too much different. I think I was sort of surprised at the stark whiteness of it. I think it's a move. I think the scale challenges me a little bit. I'll be a little contrarian here that it's so big. I felt as if, yeah, this is again a preference, right? This is a design thought, but that sort of main hall that you've really centered everything around. If it was me, I don't know if I would feel particularly comfortable in there. 20+ foot high ceiling. This thing is giant. And I feel like there's, from an exterior perspective, there could be some more detail, attention to bring down the scale a little bit of that centerpiece, not physically bring it down, but just attention to detail. Maybe it's whether it is gutters or different material applications. It's so monochromatic. I have to admit, it makes me a bit nervous. But again, it's not visible from the public, so you really can't see this thing. I would encourage the only areas of roof that I think they're a little more present in the public realm are on the ADU and the garage that abuts Shady Lane. So I would encourage you guys to keep those as low profile as possible, as nicely detailed as possible, because it is what the public sees. That's pretty much, with this a lot this size, it's all they see. Yeah, if it was, I would want something a bit more. I struggle to articulate this well, but I apologize. More articulated within that massive center zone of the home. It seems the scale doesn't. I think Joey hit it. It's approaching hotel scale or commercial scale, and I think a little more detail, could bring it down to that human scale a little bit. That I think something this large will need. But as far as supporting the project, I love the re-entrance off of Shady. I think that's great. I can't believe you got them to sell you that piece of property. That's crazy. But yeah, otherwise, I know it'll be planted well. I thought pickleball was kind of a cool idea. If ever comes back, I could support that as well, because it's certainly the sport du jour. I think that's about it. So I can fully support it. I think just a couple more details to make that thing really tight would be phenomenal.
I will say, just as, as kind of advice to the owner, that huge volume main room there, it's just huge in terms of human scale. And it just might not feel very warm. As a living
That's
room.
what I was trying to articulate, Joey.
Yeah.
But from an exterior perspective as well, the scale of that, the volume of glass, it doesn't bring it down to human scale. But again, that's a preference.
Thanks, Mark. I concur very much with the rest of the group. I think David and Michael have done an excellent job, and the Coates as well. It's a beautiful project. I do think, although it's not visible from the street, I do think it would look better if it wasn't so starkly white. And I think that Joey and Stephen's suggestions for a different roof material and or the gutters, and Mark's talk about a little more articulation in a few areas as the project gets maybe a tiny bit more developed through the next step, I think the owners would like it better once it was all done, and it would look better from the street as far as just the roof, especially the ones that Mark pointed out that are closer to Shady Lane. But I would fully support the project, going forward and being approved. So thank you for your time. I almost felt bad cutting you off, but because it's such a complex, large project that you spent so much time on, but really you've
We
got.
really wanted to talk about it.
Well, like, your
You're
goal is to build a
smart.
house. It's not to impress us. So, you're good to go.
And a pool out of the setback.
Yeah, nice job. All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation. Now we have 2 conceptual advisory design reviews, and I have a request from an ADR member that we take a 5-minute break so people can get some water or whatever else. And why don't we come back in 5, and then we'll work on the conceptual advisory design review projects. Thanks.
So
Okay.
at 8:25, Mark?
Yeah, 8:25.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm queuing up the people to, for Zero Bellagio. So I have Jeffrey Gibson. Who else would like to be a co-host? Shadi, okay.
And then Brad is going to present as well. So Shadi will speak first, and then Rebecca, and then I will speak, and I'll do a screen share as I'm speaking, if that's okay. And then Brad will speak for a little bit as well, all pretty briefly.
Yes, so you guys should all be able to share screens now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Rebecca, real quickly, I'm going to hop off and hop right back on the Zoom. Can you let me in on the waiting room when I do?
Yes.
I am having a problem with that camera. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And Jeffrey or Shadi, when one of you is presenting, can you zoom out and show exactly where the lot is? Because when I went up there, I couldn't figure out where Zero Bellagio was.
Yeah, I will show a full site survey, and I also have kind of
Yeah, if you just zoom out a little bit so I can figure out
photo.
where relative to Canyon
Yeah,
this actual platform for the building is. Thanks.
yeah, I can do that.
Great. Okay, Mark is, well, it looks like he's back on. Hold on one second. Let's just wait. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. Oh, so we're back in session now. So we're Zero Bellagio, and Jeffrey and Shadi are going to do a presentation. Actually, Rebecca, did you have something to present from the town's perspective first or not?
I do not. Thank you for asking.
Okay, and Jeffrey, I don't know if you've done a conceptual design review, but really it's just very preliminary. You just need, we don't care about floor plans or anything like that. Just really it's about the site and where you're planning on putting things in the site are the main issues.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I was going to actually start by almost saying what our objectives were for this hearing, just to frame it for you all a little bit and help us take the next steps appropriately.
Great.
Yeah, good.
Proceed.
Shadi's going to speak first a little bit.
Yeah, guys, I just want to take 2 minutes to just introduce myself for the people that don't know me. I'm Shadi Abukadr. I'm a Ross resident and the developer of this lot. I'm really excited to develop an empty lot in Ross, which I don't know if it even really exists. So it's pretty special to actually have this opportunity. And, living in Ross, I understand how special this town is and take a lot of that into consideration when I'm doing this. It means a lot to me. I'm an experienced developer. I've done numerous projects. I've been developing for 15 years. So hopefully I can make this a smooth and professional process. Keeping Ross's natural beauty, all that stuff. The other positive thing with this lot is there is no existing home on it. So this will actually add 2 homes to the Ross inventory with an ADU, if we add an ADU as well. I did do a lot of outreach to neighbors even before I purchased the lot. It was really important to me. It's always been important to me to get good neighbor relations through this entire process. And I have kept them informed about every step of the way. I actually even paid to have the land staked out so they could have a look at where the best buildable area was from civil engineer and stuff. I've really done a lot of time talking to the neighbors, especially Brian Collins, who is the closest neighbor. And I believe Brian Collins at one point was in an ADR on the ADR board. And so, he had a lot of good recommendations and he's very positive and he's going to support this project. We've hired some great people. Winder Gibson Architects, Jeff Gibson, Brad from Imprints, who was on earlier, Dan from DVC Group as our civil engineer. I've already had 3 meetings with Fire, Rob Baskin, and he is very supportive of what we've come up with so far. Before even coming up with something, I had Rob help me figure out how to do this best for Fire. And I thought that was the best way to do it. And Rob was very instrumental in helping us figure out how to protect this home. That's all I got. I'll pass it on to Jeff.
Thanks. Great, thanks, Shadi. Okay, I'm going to do a screen share here, pull this up for you all. Yeah, I love this conceptual design process. It's really nice that you have this as an option. I always like to sort of state our goals in this hearing, and I think, Mark, as you were sort of alluding to, at this point, we think of this as we've really been working on siting, access, massing, scale, placement of the house, the exact details of the design of the house, the materials, the fenestration, roof lines, some of those things very much still in flux. That's, we're trying to circle around the design problem and get to this point and have a sort of check-in with you before we start applying that next level of time and expertise and effort and everything, kind of check in that we're basically on the right path here. And so I'm going to lead you sort of around that circle just a little bit to frame help explain what we've been thinking about as we've developed it to this point, and then invite your feedback. So it's a really large site. It's a 3.4 acre site. This is the boundary survey. So Canyon is down here. You can see my cursor, and then Bellagio, which is an easement road, like a sort of private road, basically, or a road created by shared easement, winds up to the top. There's this one house at the very top. Can show you actually on this aerial view here. Again, there's Canyon, there's Bellagio, there's 3 homes on the road already, all of them on sort of one at the top of the road, 14, and then 2 on the downslope side, 11 and 7. And then this parcel was formerly owned by, I think, the same owner as the Quail Hill estate up here, that's up on the top of the hill. Way, huge elevation change. This house is not visible at all from our site in any way, or vice versa. So that's the site. Again, it's 3.4 acres. By the HLO calculation, I guess it could support an 8,372 square foot home. We're proposing a 7,400 square foot home plus an 800 square foot ADU. We're proposing a 3.3% lot coverage. So, pretty sort of minor impact on this site. But when we first looked at this site, what we really tried to look at is where was the best place to develop this site. It's sort of an unusual shape. There's a lot of places you could access off the road, but we zoomed in and we really looked at the topography. We saw that there was an area where the topography became more gentle and more natural to develop, especially developing usable outdoor space. We felt like this was the most viable place to locate the home, still far away from the neighbors, way up at the end of the road, obviously then not visible from Canyon in any way, and trying to site the house to take advantage of this more gentle sort of rolling or sloping topography in this area. And so we see that in an aerial. So we kind of considered this the main development zone. And so the next thing that we sort of thought about was access, and realizing that we were going to need to have a fire truck hammerhead or turnaround at the end of the road. There really isn't one in place today. And so our development of the turnaround is going to be a sort of shared asset really for all of the homes on that street, making it safer for everyone, giving Ross Valley Fire Department a way to turn around at the end of the road. And when we looked at the topo lines in this area, we felt like, we basically had to bring our driveway in from the very top of the road. We had to use the road to get up as high as we could, gain as much elevation as we could, and then our 15% driveway grade to come around and basically have a turnaround back here, sort of above the house. The way that Bellagio Road was created originally, there's a go to this image, there's kind of a steep embankment. If you've been there on site, when the cut and fill was done to create the road, it left a pretty high, you can see it in these images, pretty high embankment on our side. So the moment we come off the road, we've got some cut to deal with to just get our driveway into place. So the best thing that we could do was use the road to get as high as possible, end up with some cut to bring our driveway through around there, but in an area that wasn't really going to be very visible or impact anyone. and then position our house around a sort of usable outdoor space there. Getting the house really far off the street, really far off the neighbors, screened by retained mature planting, basically, retaining most of the tree cover against the street to sort of nestle our house back into the site. And again, use that sort of low slope area to develop some terracing, a pool, stairs down, half levels, so that these things sort of naturally sit on grade. So this is sort of a 3D realization of all of those decisions, if you will. We've got the driveway, that does cut into the hill and come around the back. But then as we develop the home, it sort of does step with the topography. We're able to develop flat, usable outdoor space without having huge retaining walls, which is great. It feels like a natural fit on the site. The house itself is, still kind of under development. To give you a sense of where we're going in terms of materials and aesthetic, we want to kind of have traditional classic sort of gable forms, but rendered in a really crisp and contemporary way. We want to use a lot of natural materials, maybe limestone cladding, some wood with a sort of light, almost gray washed, warm tone kind of stain to it, black windows and doors. So this is, if you can mentally map these precedent images over this postage stamp, that's a sense of kind of where we think we're going and how we think it might feel right on the site. And then the last thing I wanted to just quickly touch on was, as designed today, this project would require a little bit of height variance, and I want to show you what that is and, again, sort of invite your commentary on it. This image right here, funny one to read. What we've done is we've taken the topography and we've lofted it 30 feet in the air in the computer model so that we can see what parts of the roof are poking up through that 30-foot height limit. It's almost like a cloud cover, right? So these parts of the roof that are darker in color are the parts that are projecting above the 30-foot height limit. It's not a lot of the roof, it's a little bit of it. Due to the gabled form that we were sort of hoping to use, you can see that some of it does project above. And the reason that that's happening is that over in this area, the topography starts to be steeper. So again, we've prioritized developing this outdoor space in the low slope part. Here, the topography is naturally steeper. And as that topo drops away more quickly, that results in these incursions above the height limit in this area. Well, the majority of the house is way under the height limit. So, just interested in your take on sort of pursuing a variance for some of this. It's far away from the neighbors. I don't think it's impactful. I think it's sort of justified by the complex dual slope nature of the site. You might have also been looking at the cross sections. In each cross section, we've also put a red cut line that represents the topo at that exact moment. But just to clarify, like when you see this red line and then you see all of this roof beyond, that roof isn't all above that red line because the cut line in the topo is different by the time you get over to that roof. So the best way of understanding the degree of variance is really this sort of axonometric representation where we show you which portions are locally more than 30 feet above natural grade in that moment. So I think that's sort of all of the explanation I have. I want to pass it to Brad for a minute to talk about the landscape concept, and then maybe you all can ask us questions as you have. Brad, do you want me to leave this up or do you want to?
Yeah, just leave. Yeah, that's great. Just leave that up.
Perfect. Great.
Okay, like Jeff said, we started this, at least I started the site design by getting the roadway to work and the 15% grade going up to an auto gate. And then once you get to the front entry area, this all levels out per fire department requirements. And I was pretty shocked that we could get this to work and stay within the code of wall heights. So the walls are 5 to 6 feet high, tall, going in this area right here. And then they're separated with planting that will cascade over the walls and really conceal these walls as much as we possibly can. As Jeff said, this area kind of sits in the knoll, and we've taken up the grade changes by stairs, pool with infinity edge, and a retaining wall that runs along here. The wall in this area is only 1 foot tall, and then it maxes out about 6 feet at this bocce court. And then this area right here it's only a 2 foot wall down here. So we're not having a huge amount of retaining walls in this space, which is really amazing to me that it works out that way. I haven't got too far into planting yet, but we're going to keep it very fire safe and work with the fire department on planting schemes and plant species and limbing up trees and taking out anything pyrophytic. That's going to be a huge driver of the landscape on this project, because this area is extremely in a fire zone. And so we're going to be working with Ross Valley Fire, and have been, before we even started any design, we've been working with them. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Brad, sorry, above the driveway, are those 3 different retaining walls that are 5 to 6 feet each?
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe we could flip to the section where you can see that clearly.
Yeah, let me just go to that.
And this is by far the largest challenge in terms of site design for this project, to make the fire department requirements work. Because the hammerhead is, it's large, and you're not allowed to have any slope on the hammerhead. It's got to be a large flat area, and it has significant impacts on the roadway design and, the cut at the street. We immediately start off with a cut bank that's very steep. So, we studied a lot of different options, and there's really not another.
Pretty faint and pretty clunky, because our computer rendering isn't smooth these walls out yet. So this is the, Minecraft version, I guess you'd say. But you can see, as Brad's noting, you hit this embankment, and so right away you have to cut to just get off the road. And then you're sort of trying to catch up with that problem the whole way through. But if we were to come off the road any further down, you have a worse problem, basically. So I think we're doing a pretty good job. If we didn't have the hammerhead turnaround, we could do something steeper than 15%. But we want to, make sure that that's safe for fire. And I think that we can study some of these a little more, and maybe do some additional grading to try to reduce wall heights, sort of regrade back up the hill a little further. But and one suggestion that was made to us, we haven't had time to do it yet, was to do some perspective views from the street, because this all curves and goes out of sight. So although it's a lot of retaining wall, I think it's not actually going to be really visible. And frankly, there's only one other neighbor who would ever even be up here.
Can you go back to that cutout section?
Yeah.
That you had that showed those walls from the side?
Yeah.
Great. So if you zoom in there,
yeah,
I'm curious, when you look at the house and this, the red line showing the 30 foot above existing grade, how high is the peak of that roof, not from the existing grade, but from the floor of the entry level floor at 260?
Right. I have this set up.
So actually, I think if you
Numbers
scroll
call it.
a little to
Numbers
the right,
say it.
I can see that.
Yeah, the numbers say it right here.
I think you have the numbers to the right if you just scroll.
That's all right.
Let's see. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so sorry.
So
it's basically 30 feet above the entry level floor,
That's right.
but
That's
it's
right.
more than 30 feet high because of what the existing grade is.
That's right.
That's right.
And the total of the 3 retaining walls is approximately, what's that, 20 feet?
Well,
18?
it varies as you get near the ends. The top wall becomes less because it kind of goes to 0. But they're max out at 6 feet each, and they may be more by the time I put slope between each wall. they may be more like 5.5 and even maybe 5 feet each.
Okay, thanks. That's, I was just curious.
This section actually brings up one other point that I meant to make, but didn't, because I want to sort of invite your commentary on this. So the way that we were going to position the ADU is to have it be a sort of walkout basement ADU, essentially. And I know that the Ross planning code sort of stipulates that buildings should never be more than 2 stories tall. The ADU, in essence, kind of tucks under the house back here, but I'm not really sure if that inherently creates a problem. Like in a way, there in this area right here, the building is 3 stories tall, although the lowest story is essentially buried in the ground in that
Would
area.
it conform?
And it's the ADU.
Would it conform to the definition of a basement? Meaning a basement in the code has a circumference that is covered by more than 75% or something. I can't remember it offhand. Maybe it does. But if it does, then it would really just be a 2-story over a basement, which would not require a variance. If it's a story by definition,
right,
it would require a variance technically.
I think
Yeah,
it.
looking
I
at
think
that,
it would.
looking at that rendering, it seems like the exterior wall is more than 50% of the.
Yeah.
But it sticks out. And that's a Rebecca question, probably.
Yeah. So I think over here it would be exposed.
So
when you
probably
come
wouldn't
around
need
the
to
other
get-
so over here, it's buried.
Just a little bit. So it probably doesn't need-
it probably doesn't exactly meet the code in, for a basement, although, and it almost relates a little bit to the height variance. It's sort of, and that's why we're inviting your feedback. Like, does it seem irresponsible to seek the height variance and or the story variance? This seems like a great place for the ADU. Like, it's this kind of natural fit as the grade falls down. We could, I guess, pluck the ADU out and sort of pull it further so that it never became a 3-story volume, but I don't really know how that helps anyone per se. So I don't know. I'm not sure. And then it being an ADU under state code, it's like, how does that even correlate? So because per state code, it's sort of like it's not there in a strange way, right?
Well, and it needs to have a separate entrance and not be attached, or sorry, not have an entrance into the house and have a separate entrance to the
I
outside.
think what he's saying is about the 3rd floor. If it creates, does it really create a 3rd floor if the ADU is not there?
Kind of. I mean, I'm not trying to work a loophole or something. I'm
Yeah,
asking
and
more of
that's
like
a-
a city.
and that's a-
It's like a city attorney question,
We're actually still learning.
That's a question for Rebecca based on the state law. So
Yeah.
I will.
And I think
tell
it can
you-
have an interior access to the rest of the house. It just has to have like a 45-minute rated door.
Not
We're
according
at that
to
interior access.
not according to Ross policy or Ross precedent, but
Yeah, I think the state law is it's not allowed to have a door that goes into the house, because then it's just an extra room.
at least that's been the interpretation on other projects, actively yeah.
And,
Okay, because
yeah.
we're doing them in several other towns right now, and they've been fine with that, especially on the logic of like that ADU is often actually used for, say, an in-law or something, right? And
Yeah, agreed.
so having actual interior access so that grandma can come and look after your kid or whatever, works.
So
But
yeah,
it
that's
has to
not
be
a
like fire
ADR
separated and
question,
acoustically
that's
separated.
a town and state law question.
Yeah,
That's not
but
really-
we've had some with interior door connections. We absolutely have seen those come through the ADR.
Not in Matthew's time.
No, not since the state law passed.
I don't think that there's anything in our code that would prohibit an interior door.
Okay.
But I
It was
will look
interpreted
into
that way
I don't-
previously.
but
Yeah, we
we'll
can
double
we can
check.
look into that more. We
Yeah.
basically have this little staircase that comes from above, and then there's a door, and then the ADU is here. The ADU has its own proper exterior entrance, and it has its own pathway. to
But
get
I
to
think
that
that's only
entrance that
relevant
doesn't-
if you're trying to get the extra 850 square feet, which
Which
this
they are.
project is not.
No, it is, I think, right?
No,
No, because they're still under their
we're
FAR
we're still
total.
under FAR total anyway.
Got
We just
So it
think it's
doesn't
the right
really
thing to
matter
do.
in this case.
Yeah,
Whereas in other
right.
cases, when people are getting an additional 850 over the FAR, then
Right.
then it needs to conform to certain
Right.
things. And I believe
Right.
there's no interior door in that case.
Right.
But either way, that's not an ADR question.
Okay.
In answer to your earlier question with the height variance, traditionally, Ross has not been granting variances for new projects for height because the guidelines say that you're supposed to, if you're building on a hillside, well, if you're building on the flat, you just have to keep it under 30 feet. So it's a new building and it's easy. If you're building on a hillside, you're supposed to design it where it's more, I forget the exact term, but basically in tune, aligned with the hillside and not sticking up from the hill. So
Terracing down with the hills.
yeah, so you might have trouble with a brand new home with fill and then a 30-foot house on top, because that goes against the design guidelines of trying to build the house into the hill and have it step up with the hill.
Right. How does that step up work when you're not allowed to have 3 stories?
They just
Right?
have to be staggered. Yeah, they just have to be staggered.
They stagger. So I
They-
think
you just never stack 3 at once. So
Correct.
the three stories is not, it's not having 3 stories. It's that you've never got more than 2 at once.
exactly. There's
Which
never
makes it very hard to develop like stair cores or elevators or anything like that. But
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
So are we going to come back and have like each of us give a recommendation?
Let's
or
do
how-
it because I think we've seen the project
Yeah.
enough at this
Okay.
point.
Okay.
So-
Can I say one thing,
Stephen,
guys?
would you like to go first?
Guys, do you mind if I say one thing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only difference between the hillside that you guys are talking about and stacking them and a flat lot is this is actually on a knoll. So it is like this. You're not coming down a hillside. You're on a knoll. So if you go left, it's one side, right, it's one side. So it's a very unique topography. So just keep that in mind. Thanks.
Stephen?
I think that the siting of the house is great. It makes sense with the topography to me. And I understand that the preliminary modeling of the walls related to the driveway are clunky in rendering, but I don't think that they would be obtrusive in person in reality. So I think that how the house is sited and kind of fits in makes it a very buildable lot and makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm kind of comfortable with where the house is and how the approach of the driveway has been thought through. So that all makes sense to me. And the general form of the house is okay in that its primary part is spread out in parallel to the topography and the pool is in parallel to that. I think there's too much building volume on the south side. And I think that in trying to use the flat space for the pool and the terrace, it creates the problem that we're discussing. It creates the height problem. And I think when we look at the massing of the volume from the ADU side, there are these skirted walls and then the ADU, and then there are 3 stories above that. And we're seeing that in the height. And so I don't see, I know steep topography is a problem, but I don't see why there's an extraordinary hardship here that dictates that it be above the height limit. I know it's tough to get everything you want sometimes with topography, but I don't see an extraordinary circumstance. But apart from that, because it doesn't non-conform in a huge way. If it were conforming, I would say great. Obviously need to work on some of the facades are clunky in terms of fenestration and stuff, and whatever. We're not trying to be critical about that right now, and I'm sure it'll look beautiful when it's designed. So I don't think that I would, if you're looking for whether we would kind of say, yeah, go ahead and design it this tall. I don't know. I wouldn't think that, I think that would be misplaced effort. But if it weren't for that, except for that non-conformity, I would say it looks great.
Stephen, can I ask you a quick question about that too? So it's interesting because it's been really helpful watching all the other cases in this particular, tonight's agenda too. And does the ADR sort of distinguish between the flat roofs and the gabled roofs, right? And as you well know, as an architect in San Francisco, the height limit is measured to the midpoint of a roof. Yep. That's not obviously true in Ross. So sort of, we're trying to develop these nice gabled forms, but in some sense, as an architect, you often think, well, now I'm being kind of penalized because the tip of my roof has to fit under this thing when I could have just done a flat roof under this thing.
Yeah.
But does that I mean, that's a design decision. Does that factor into variance thinking? It shouldn't.
I think
really,
that, I think the code should be changed so that the height is measured to the midpoint, because I think it would encourage steep roofs, which are better than kind of flat front-of-yard roofs.
Right.
But, um, but no, I mean, if there's an existing nonconformance that then is seeking replacement, having equal nonconformity, you know, not making it worse is fine. But so I don't think when it comes to the tipping point of breaking the code and seeking variance based on extraordinary circumstances, that there is really grace given for the sake of design. That's what you're asking.
Right. Yeah, and that's traditional. Like, you shouldn't design, I want it to look this way is not a variance justification. It isn't in Ross, it isn't anywhere. I was just thinking back to some of the really good commentary that Joey in particular was giving with that relatively modern house on the flat zone. I don't remember what the address was, but yeah.
I think
I probably would say the same thing here, is that I think when you do a more of a modern box form, you can't assume you get a 30-foot high box, because
Right,
that feels really different. Like, I love the forms of this house.
Great.
I'll get to my comments, but it's, I think it's different. It's just different if you do a box.
Mm-hmm. That's it. I mean, you're saying the same thing in a different way, which is great, which is sort of to say, even if you had flat roofs, don't assume you're just gonna get all that in there. So in a sense, that sort of averaging is a little bit built into the design guidelines, if not built into the code.
Right.
Yeah, good. Okay, I'll back off. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Were you done, Stephen, or did you have it?
Yeah, no, I'm done.
Okay, well, Joey, why don't you started talking, so why don't you just finish up and then we'll keep it moving along.
Okay, great. First of all, I'm very partial to this style of home. I love the finishes and the whole idea of kind of the modern take on the gabled roof form and these very natural finishes. I think it will be really beautiful up there. So I'm a big fan of that. And I think you've cited the development very well. I don't have any problem with those retaining walls as they step up. I think they will be planted and it will be fine, and nobody sees that, and it allows for a nice entry with a big wide road for a fire truck. I will say, with a brand new development, there's really no findings for any sort of a hardship where you have to exceed the 30-foot height limit. And I just wonder, have you studied detaching the ADU and putting it somewhere else on the property apart from the house, and then sinking the whole right wing of the house that has the garage and the 2-story house, just sinking it down a little bit more? Has that ever been studied, where it's not sitting on the basically kind of the plinth of the ADU, you know, like the whole house just sits down more?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's some of what we'll have to do. You know, maybe pushing the whole development down. We're going to also look at maybe sliding it down the hill a little further. I mean, there's a number of things in play like that we've been thinking about in terms of, you know, these are just personal project goals, but we love this like indoor outdoor living. This is basically you know, the family room, the kitchen, this gorgeous breakfast nook. Then we got the pool. Then we have this thing that we call the pavilion, which is we're counting it as square footage. It's legit square footage, but really its intent is that these doors are open like all the time. And this is basically an outdoor room. Like
it seems
outdoor
amazing.
dining table, outdoor, you know, 2-sided fireplace, outdoor, like it's not, you know, it's technically, you can close the doors and you could warm it up if you need to, but its intent is an outdoor room. And so being able to have both of these be on the same level and be able to, it's almost like a courtyard house. Like, you're encouraged to circulate outside more than you are inside. So if we push things down, we'll kind of push it all down, or create some slight sublevels or something like that. That's really good suggestions though, Joey.
Kind of the right side of the house is proportionately just too tall and too big.
Yeah. Or what Stephen is saying is maybe we need to reconsider, like maybe we need to take the upper floor off this part of the house if this is really going to come this way. You know, I think in a sense that's what you're saying, Stephen, right? Like the house works across the grade here, but then it becomes problematic here. So, you know, I don't know if this moves over to there or we can figure it out, but one of those two things or a combination of those two things needs to
That would be
happen.
great. Yeah, just a shorter wing there and putting some of it over there where you suggested, kind of above the fireplace that's indicated over there. Something like that would be great.
Like that.
Would be good.
Yeah.
Would work. Yep.
Cool. Cool.
Mark, would you like to go?
Yeah, I think I'm in line with what Joey and Stephen have said. I would say, yeah, I would recommend get everything beneath the 30 feet, no variances. It's a big lot. You have the opportunity to manipulate grade in any way you want. I don't have a problem with the retaining walls either. Seems to be like, that's just the nature. I'm assuming this is not a hillside lot. Rebecca, it's not a hillside lot?
It is a hillside lot.
It
It is
is.
hillside, okay.
It's just big enough that much FAR is allowed. I think.
Oh, yeah, okay, there you go.
It's a
Usually
3.4.
really
I mean,
restricts the
it's a
amount of
3 point,
FAR.
you know, the last
3 acres.
project, the DeWitt project, they were like, oh, it's a huge lot. I'm like, our lot is like 1.5 times as big as yours, and our allowable house is 2/3 of what yours is.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I
it's
get it.
fine. We don't need to build
Yeah.
more house. This is fine, but it's
Totally. I just was curious. It is hillside lot. You meet the requirements. Yeah, I think
yeah.
stepping it in some way, shape, or form is going to get you. You know, actually, I think it might actually deliver a volume that might be more scaled on that downslope a little bit. The only other thing I would say is, you know, I think that I like your vision board and your form board as well. The articulation as you get back to that sort of wing that is on the right hand side with the stairs coming back towards the hammerhead. Not this downslope piece, but back there. Yeah, there's starting to be kind of this bunch of masses that you know, just as I would just recommend one of the things that I saw and see in the style of home that Joy was commenting on is the simplicity, right? And when you get these sort of boxes on top of boxes on top of boxes and shoved in here, you lose the simplicity. So then you start reading things a lot differently. In my opinion, the style doesn't come across anymore based on the scale and then the number of intersections. If you look at some of those examples, there's a simple backdrop with one move, right? And that's like on your right hand one, there's a simple form with a cutout. That's the move. You know, on the one in the upper left, it's a simple bar building with one dormer move.
Right.
So as I started to see the perspective that you show often where the pool is, that's starting to articulate kind of nicely. But when you kind of start to spin around the home, you've lost a little of that, I would say.
Totally.
And I encourage you to kind of get back to that simple form with one move. And that's what I love about that bar next to the pool. Like that's fantastic.
Right.
So just, you know, as you articulate this and manipulate some of the masses and volumes, I would encourage you to think like move and a backdrop and a move might help it coalesce a little bit because it's starting to lose it a little around the backside. It's starting to kind of get a little clunky. But overall, I think it's great. I like the siding of it. I think that's the right spot to put it. I'm assuming I didn't physically turn around and look. That's where the views are, and you've got
you have like some nice
exposure
TAM views, and especially you're capturing like a nice exposure for that outdoor.
The southern exposure.
Yeah.
So
it dual purposes by getting the house away from the neighbors too. So
it's
great.
Yeah, and I think it is an interesting idea. You've got this pavilion, that bar that kind of operates. You know, at the end, it's got sort of a piece. Maybe there's an option for something similar on the site somewhere that the ADU exists in its own little world. You know, maybe, right? I'm not going to pretend to drive, but if you could pull a little mass out of the house,
right?
You might be able to reconfigure it so it sinks down a little bit and finds its simple form again. Because the ADU is adding again another block to that mass. It's a little tricky, but other than that, it's nice. You know, I'm encouraged.
A good start.
Oh yeah, no,
it's
way beyond a good start. You've way beyond that. I hate when people say that. It's a good start. It's like no. We've spent hours and weeks and months on this. It's way beyond that. It's starting to look really nice.
I'll sort of admit something a little bit about this part of the house too. Is when we look at these precedent images, you know, what is this? This is a 2,800 square foot house, right? It's
Yes.
it's haiku. It's so crisp and so beautiful because it also doesn't need to be that big. And I think that there's always a challenge when you try to make something much bigger and the precedents of it are smaller. This is a little bit more on scale. But so we thought about that because we have programmatic goals or square footages we want to, need to achieve those programmatic goals. And we felt like on the site, what is interesting is like this part of the house, like only mountain goats will see it. It doesn't mean that we should be lame and let it be ugly, but at the same time, we're kind of like almost like if we have to tuck some additional program and mass kind of around the corner and around the back, maybe we can do that so that the parts of the house that you really, really see from the street, from the driveway, from the courtyard, those can maintain that like crisp, clear volumetric study. And we're not there with those volumes yet, but it's really interesting to me that you sort of caught us in it, Mark. You saw it. You were like, it's a little clunky back there. We're like, yeah, that's kind of where we store things. We put it around the corner.
You remind me of the people that have the beautiful shot of the bedrooms of one bedroom and all the other bedrooms are like 8 by 5.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
but I would think you've identified one totally different scheme, and I'll leave it at this. But the idea of decomposing the massing to get what you want as far as an aesthetic is an approach. And that's kind of where I was going with pulling the ADU apart. We saw a project up on Woodside. It might have been on Lagunitas, can't remember what it was. And it almost had this incredible camp-like feel. It had it was multi-building, but it was all connected and put together in a really crisp way. And, that may not apply here in any way, shape, or form, but I wanted to say, because you've centralized it, you do struggle with articulating a large mass.
Right.
In a really nice and detailed way. So, but you'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Okay, you good, Mark?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'd say I concur with the other three. Well done on the sighting. It looks very good from some angles. The mass is a little too big on the right-hand side as we're looking at it from the street or from this perspective. And for sure on a new house, on a hill, I can't see the town ever giving a variance for height because it's just not needed. So just try to figure that out with the massing. You can always try to go to town council with that, but as a general rule on a new house, they're not going to have a height variance. I can't think of one that's happened in the last decade.
That's good.
Cool. So thank you. And it looks great. And good luck with it.
Thank you so much for your feedback, everybody. This was incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to reworking it a bit and reintroducing it to you soon.
Look forward to seeing it.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
And then we have the next and final project is 3 Skyland Way. He's come back again for another conceptual. This is the one that we did a conceptual on a couple months ago. So just, probably just a couple minutes, you can tell us if there's any changes you made. Great, tell us about that. And if you have particular questions about them, but there didn't seem to be a lot of comments after the first time, because people liked the project and we're just sort of asking you to move a few things out of the setbacks, was my recollection.
Correct. Thank you, Mark, and thank you to the rest of the ADR for letting us join again tonight. I know it's been a long night, so we appreciate your time. I'm going to see if I can share screen before I totally launch in real quick.
And just as that's being pulled up, your recap is correct, but we had some questions that we were looking for clarification on regarding the building height, just in the spirit of full disclosure. And I'll let David get into that right now.
Sure. So quick recap. I think most people are familiar with the site. So existing conditions, this is roughly our lot. There are access easements kind of in this corner here, this kind of quarter circle here, and then the alley back towards the east. Laurel Grove is to the north. Skyland Way is kind of to our northwest. And there's the existing home, the kind of large footprint, 3-story structure, pretty much central to our lot existing there. And I can pull up the SketchUp model in a second. So We haven't made a lot of significant changes to the design, so I'll kind of scroll fairly quickly through the existing conditions and probably jump to those. I think we've updated.
Yeah, you can skip the existing because it doesn't matter at this point.
Exactly.
Just only the changes from the last time.
Really, the biggest changes primarily are going to be in the elevations, and it's going to be similar kind of tone to conversation we had before, except for we have the existing non-conforming conditions with the building height. So what I've mapped out is kind of the outline of the existing structure relative to ours. And again, just because we know we're kind of trying to thread the needle with the topography, make sure we can maintain at-grade access at our lowest level tied to existing grade because of the ADA needs for family and family members. The other line we end up with is kind of this dash line of if we offset 30 feet to our max height from existing grade, which is not natural, but it's the modified because it's been flattened out for existing conditions. Parts of our gables are clipping, and I realize I probably need to do the little axon views that we just saw from the previous applicant because those are super helpful, and we're just not quite that far along in our models. But we want to really make sure that we were interpreting the code correctly, and we spoke with Rebecca on Monday that because of the existing conditions and non-conforming conditions, that what we'd be asking for is more of the I gotta get the term correctly here, but not a variance, I think, but it is a non-conforming use permit. And then as a part of that, I wanted to make sure that you as the design review board felt like what we're proposing is consistent with the intent of kind of the design guidelines and what you're seeing and kind of what you're wanting to see from this. So I think the comments seem to indicate that during the first review, but again, we just want to make sure as this is kind of a new process for us. So I'll probably pull up the SketchUp model because I think it's a little bit easier to see that. So,
is it 3 stories or is it 2 over a basement by building code or by Ross planning code?
I think by Ross planning code, as you can see, the existing grade.
No, not the existing, sorry, the proposed design, is it 3 stories or 2 over a basement? Do you
2 over basement, and that was one of the clarifications you gave us where we kind of looked at that basement footprint, made sure that our footprint is not more than 6 feet for greater than 25%, so we would meet those requirements to become a basement, not a 3rd story. And I think the existing structure is full 3-story, but we're trying to propose 2 over basement.
Yeah, and so your question is it a valid request to request a non-conformity permit or whatever the terminology is, Rebecca, for a new house that would break the height limit in a certain way that's less than the current house, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and or for that matter, if you're going for that, then maybe the bottom floor, maybe I gave you bum advice, and maybe the bottom floor could be a story if you're kind of asking for a non-conformity permit anyway on height. Maybe it doesn't matter that it meets the technical definition of basement. But so that's the question that you're posing tonight to all of us, I guess. Yeah.
And that's what we just want to make sure we're understanding kind of your interpretation of that and kind of what you're seeing as the design intent for the community so that we're being good stewards of that intent.
So for me, my understanding, having built a new house, was that it didn't matter if the old house was higher. If you're remodeling a house, you don't want to exacerbate it. But if you're building something new, the town wants you to not have any non-conformities unless there's some hardship involved.
We do make an exception, Mark, sorry to interrupt, on square footage, right? Like if someone has a house that exceeds the FAR, then the policy is to let them create a new house that is of the same non-conforming FAR, right?
If
Correct.
it's architecturally,
If it's contextually appropriate.
if it's architecturally appropriate or approved, but I think Mark is right in that you don't, just because the existing house doesn't conform height wise doesn't mean you get that height again. I think a 30-foot height limit is very hard and fast with new construction. Unless, like,
Stephen, I'm
there's
not
no
saying
hardship.
that's how it necessarily should be. I'm just saying that's how it is.
Totally. No, I'm just trying to figure out current policy as well.
The nonconformity permit, the purpose of the intent of it is that, you know, we understand that residential structures were built in this town that didn't conform to the zoning code because they were established before the adoption.
Predated.
Let me just read. The purpose of this section is to allow for the continued existence, reconstruction, and modification of non-conforming residential structures. So the way that it reads, it's not specific to floor area.
Yeah, understand.
So, I mean, I guess based on that question and the way you actually propose it, that maybe we weren't paying that much attention to, like, one, it's nicer that it's more conforming than what's existing. And I think we all sort of agree with that. Plus, we all think it's a beautiful house. However, you'd probably be smarter and have an easier time through town council if you just built a house conforming to 30 feet.
Yes.
Is my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
And if you're only over by a foot or two here or there, you know,
Can you highlight for us where it's kind of like there or something? It's hard to read that faint.
Yeah, I'll see if I can pull the cursor real quick.
But I mean, it seems like it'd be pretty easy to make that. It looks like it's, you know, 1 foot to 18 inches.
No, it's more than that.
Two-story house.
It's probably like 3 to 4
It's kind
feet
of
over.
the hard part, and this is where I really need to diagram that the last applicant did too, because you know, this is a 2-dimensional line based on one plane, and the topography is changing in 3 different directions. So I need to kind of go through and cut through that plane as part of.
Yeah, is that exactly at the peak, or is it before the peak or after the peak? So
yeah,
your diagram below, actually, the other elevation, the perpendicular elevation to that, if you had up before.
There.
Oh yeah, that one at the top. I'm sorry, just at the top of that same page you were just drawing on shows the peak cutting across that.
Yeah, and that's where and it kind of tapers, right? It's a little taller here, and then it gets shorter.
Exactly.
Oh, so yeah, there it makes it, yeah, depending where it is.
That's one of the that's the tallest section that it is poking above the 30 feet.
I mean,
Most likely.
I mean, personally, I think it looks far better than what's there. But you know, 30 feet is an arbitrary number. Why is it 30 and not 32 and not 28? But I'm just saying that's what it is. So you'd have an easier time if it was at 30.
And the challenge is in terms of dropping it from an aesthetic standpoint, I think we could certainly make that work, but to be able to, on where the site is, to be able to get the pool deck at an at-grade ADA level, from the basement, as well as get an at-grade entry at the front auto court and get the elevator into the house. That's what's dictating the roof plates and the roof heights.
Yes, but those are constraints that you create for yourself. And those are wishes, not.
But how are you going to fit the elevator, Stephen?
No, I mean, I understand that. I think at the end of the day, there's the 3 levels that we're trying to work with.
Right.
Can I ask Rebecca a question? You mentioned the development of the grade line was based on existing grade post placement of the home, the current home.
It reads.
I don't recall exactly when real grade or original grade is supposed to be measured or can be measured. I don't know if that helps you or hurts
It's not, Mark. I think it says pre or post project. So there's nothing to stop you from modifying grade in one project and then using that grade as the basis in the next, kind of. But I think it says we'd have to go to the definition.
Yeah, it's usually even if it's been modified,
It's
that's
not
what
predate.
it's supposed to use, which is stupid. And you had to do that on the current house that I'm in. And like, because the people had built a slope, then in that area, we weren't allowed to build the same height because they had artificially made a slope side next to the driveway, a decade
the definition
before.
of existing, right?
Yeah.
Pre-modified existed, like that's, anyway, Rebecca was going to say something. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I couldn't find it in the definitions. I know I've seen it and it's late now and I'm not remembering where in the.
Yeah, it'd be worthy of just ensuring the accuracy of your definition of existing grade.
And that's really a question for Rebecca and not us, as far as how the town looks at that.
Okay, exactly.
Okay,
but in general, I concur with Mark and Joey and Stephen. It is obviously an improvement over what exists. Not only the physical height, but also the pitch of the roof. The plate heights, the eaves, everything makes this home much smaller in scale across the board. So from an architectural standpoint, you've done what we would hope you would do. From a code perspective, yeah, it's always going to be easier if you're not going to ask for any variances or minor code exceptions.
And sorry, was there another question you had other than this, height one, which is obviously a big issue? for
Yeah,
you?
and there was, and just to summarize, it sounds like this is kind of the technicality question of what those definitions are. We need to.
It's
work-
here, it's
fine-tune
18,
it.
it's 181280. Building height means the vertical distance as measured in any straight line from any point to either existing or finished grade, whichever is lower, meaning pre-project or post-project, you know, nothing can stick above 30 feet above the ground.
Okay. Understood.
Okay, sorry you had to wait so long to get an answer for that.
No, it's okay. I mean, this is
Thank you, Stephen.
helpful. It's a learning process for us. So I think the other building, and I'm going to go to the SketchUp model for this, I want to kind of look at, I think was the garage in the back. And I think this came up earlier this evening as well, the garage in the rear yard. So we were just confirming that right now we're planning on a secondary detached garage that encroaches within the normal 30-foot rear yard setback based on our lot size, but maintains the 10-foot setback. So I think we're conforming in that sense, but from a design standpoint, from a neighborhood perception of it, we want to make sure that you wouldn't have any concerns with us placing it back here, because we heard some conversation about pools, but I think that dealt more with things going into the setback. So by right, I think we're okay, but from that design intent and from a neighborhood perspective, want to make sure you feel comfortable with us locating this building in this corner here.
So it seems like that would be fine based on the code, but I'm curious as to you calling it a garage if there's no access for vehicles to get there, or am I missing something?
There, I'll go back to the site plan real quick. So there is a vehicular access easement here, which goes to the alleyway that connects back to Laurel Grove. And there's an existing gate and driveway here. The driveway,
Oh, okay.
the full length. So we'd be reusing that, improving the gate and the landscape that kind of buffers it, and then just adding a structure here instead of having the driveway across the whole lot.
Are there little doors planned there that would it be for just bikes and things or something?
Yeah, detached garage, so bikes and then future cars, the kids get older, so it's the space for the third car, so we don't have to have such a large garage footprint up front at the house that gets underutilized, and then potentially garden storage, as we have the garden in the back with the orchard and kind of flower in the raised beds, things like that. So it's the other stuff that supports the garden area and all this kind of back of house, plus then the garage.
You might want to just check with the town once again for the exact code definition of a garage, because if you're using the garage definition in order to get in the rear yard setback, you want to make sure that your doors and access to it technically qualify as a garage, even if you're not planning on parking cars there immediately.
What's the little shed on the back of it? Is that the bike shed or something like that? There's like a little lean-to on the back of that building.
I'll give you the elevations too real quick. Let's go through it. That was kind of this side, but that was open carport space that could connect through back to the garage.
Oh, okay. I do
We
think
have light sensors, commercial codes, so we're going to turn them back on.
you do need to, if you're using the 10-foot setback exception that a garage is allowed, it's starting to look a lot like a pool house.
Noted.
Especially since there are no garage doors, the vehicle could get in.
That is aesthetic, but those are garage doors.
Oh, okay. I've never seen that large of a piece of glass on a garage door.
We
If it's a
have
garage door,
several
it's a garage door.
seen that in the past. It looks nice.
And
Yeah,
don't
it's
get
just-
the last VE, but
I think if it's a bona fide garage, that's fine, but I think that will be looked at.
okay,
Okay.
understood. I think those are the two kind of targeted areas that we just kind of came up as open-ended. I think you gave us helpful feedback last time, so we wanted to check in one more time before we keep pushing too far along here. So
Okay, well, thank you.
likewise,
And
thank you.
have a good night.
We will. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for checking in with us. It's a beautiful project.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, and I've had a couple of conversations with Rebecca, and when she sort of took over, there was a huge backlog of projects, and you guys have been great in getting all this done. And now we're going to go back to having, 1, 2, or 3 projects going forward. This has just sort of been a these marathon sessions because there was so much backlog from her predecessors, not getting things all the way through. And of course, you've seen Hilgert, 17 times now. So that adds a project each month. But I think going forward, we'll have significantly less to do, just for your own information. Our next scheduled time is September 20th. I personally will not be able to make that. I could do it if it was 1 week later, but maybe there are enough people to make it on that September 20th day to have a quorum. Usually people are more back in town then. I just happen to be gone that night for a conference, and I'll be at a meeting.
I could do the 20th or the 27th.
I'm here on the 20th.
I'm here
You're
for
here on the
both.
20th.
I'm here for both, I believe. So
I would be
flexible.
out on the 27th.
Okay, well then we might as well do it the 20th, as long as there are 3 of you, that's great. And maybe Laura as well, then you'd have 4.
I would agree. Let's try to keep it as close to the date as possible. So the 20th at 7.
Okay.
Maybe we can have like 1 or 2 fewer. These get a little, they do get a little.
Yeah. And I just didn't want people to have to wait an extra month. So we were sort of cramming everything in, but yeah, that won't be the case going forward now. There's a much smaller pipeline.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think when we look at projects that are brand new, like 3 DeWitt or 2 DeWitt or whatever it is, we want to dedicate as much time to those because that's a comparatively to smaller projects. Like great, 15,000 square foot house in the center of town, 12 minutes.
I know.
An hour and a half on Hilgert. So I think we
Yeah.
should think about that as we move forward. Like we may never see 2 DeWitt or Shady or whatever that again, which would be disappointing. because
I
it's
would
crazy.
also agree along that thought process. It's just there has, as Mark has indicated, there's a backlog.
There's a backlog, yeah.
Ironically, the smaller the lot, the more contentious it is.
Right.
On these huge lots where they can actually conform to everything. It's like, we're talking about the cool stuff,
Right.
Yeah, it's
the fun stuff, but with these smaller lots where it's completely non-conforming, and all the neighbors are mad. They take a long time and they keep coming back.
Well, I think once it comes back to the ADR, you just need to stop having the like, there was that good half hour tonight where it was back to the ADR making the recommendations and people were having conversations with the architects and designers still. Like, I think at that point, just bring it back to the ADR, make the recommendations and move on.
Yeah, I mean, when these projects, you're making the same recommendations 4 times in a row, 3 meetings, you're saying the exact same thing. I don't know. It's frustrating. Okay.
I actually have one item under number 6, information and discussion, and I will make it very brief.
Okay.
We can't really discuss it because it hasn't been agendized, but I just want to let you know that probably at the September or October city council meeting, we'll discuss the hybrid meeting option for ADR, just because this is the second time that we've offered a hybrid meeting and no ADR members are in attendance at town hall. It costs the city money. We want to be, good stewards of the public dollar that we are spending on these hybrid meetings. It costs about $400 each meeting. The way that the town council kind of looks at it is they are not in attendance if they have COVID or some other type of virus that they think they're spreading. I mean, so I just wanted to sort of put that out there and let you know that I've talked to Krista, the town manager, about it. And so we're just, we would love some feedback from you. Perhaps you guys can email me individually so it doesn't create a quorum problem, but I just, I'm putting it out there. And I appreciate all of the time that you spend doing these meetings, and I understand the ease of doing it at Zoom or things come up, and Zoom is great. So maybe we just want to go back to doing all Zoom, which is, perfectly acceptable. So let's if you could actually send me an email just with your thoughts on it, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, no, that's a good idea.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Now I suggest we end the meeting. Someone second an adjournment?
Yep.
I second that emotion.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Guys, I really.
Thank you, Joey and Mark, for running it. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank
It's been good.
Talk
Thanks,
soon.
everyone.
Bye, Rebecca. Thank you.
Bye.
Guys.